Can we wait for 5 more minutes? No.
Exactly.
Wait, I have to fix my chair.
Okay.
Congratulations, Jesse.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah.
Am I tall enough? I thought there'd be a lot more people here today.
What's that?
Am I tall enough? Did you laugh, Lydia?
I did.
Hey.
Oh, look. It's our budget.
Yeah, we finally have it. Exactly. Hey, how are you?
Oh, here it is.
Okay. Okay.
I thought this would be a bigger draw tonight.
Me too. Yeah.
Where are the people?
I don't know. Okay. Oh, here's
They're all on vacation. So.
exactly. And it's first day of school.
Oh.
Little reversal there. Good eye, Thomas. I was checking the cameras.
Oh, you switched my name.
I always wanted to do that for April Fool's Day.
All right. Let's light this candle. Well, good evening and welcome to the September 4th, 2018 Federal Way City Council meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome everyone. We've got a full agenda, a lot of things going on. All right, so first we've got the Mayoral Proclamation for the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry. I'll invite Terry Turner from the Multi-Service Center Food and Clothing Bank Director to come on up, and I'll go ahead and read the Mayoral Proclamation. If you want to wait right there at the podium, and Terry, thank you so much for being here, and before I say another word, thank you so much for your work. All right, so here's the proclamation for the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry. Whereas the City of Federal Way recognizes adequate nutrition as a basic goal for each citizen, and whereas it is our fundamental belief that no parent should have to send a child to school hungry, no baby should be without the comfort of the feedings needed for mental and physical growth, no elderly person's health should be jeopardized by lack of appropriate foods, and whereas the Multi-Service Center's food bank, emergency and hot meal programs, local churches, social service agencies, and hundreds of volunteers are striving each day to stem the rising tide of hunger, but still need more help. And whereas many Federal Way residents have the ability to impact hunger in their community through donations of food, and whereas we will strive to raise awareness and encourage our citizens to donate food to the hungry as winter approaches, and their resources must be stretched to cover increasing fuel, electricity, and rental costs, leaving any less money for monthly food purchases. And whereas the Emergency Feeding Program of Seattle and King County coordinates an annual food drive to help support the efforts of their program and the area's food banks in fighting hunger, which will be held at grocery stores throughout King County on Saturday, September 15th, 2018, of which I will talk about all the locations, and actually I'll bring it to the podium in just a moment. Now, therefore, I, the undersigned mayor of the City of Federal Way, do hereby proclaim September 15th, 2018 as Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry in the City of Federal Way, and strongly urge all citizens to join the Emergency Feeding Program and the Multi-Service Center to nourish those who are hungry. Signed this 4th day of September 2018.
Mayor, council, ladies and gentlemen, I accept this with great pleasure. Federal Way has been, all those categories you listed, you've also helped us serve those people. So we really appreciate it. I've been at the food bank now it'll be 10 years at the end of this month. And when I came 10 years ago, they took me out to the warehouse and they showed, this is always a difficult time of year. This is when things have, we're kind of getting to the dregs, and it's almost holiday season. So they took me out there and they'd just taken a picture of the last can of soup. So this is a real tight time. So it's a perfect time for the mayor to help us all. And with all those other things, the small children, in summer now we do summer meals. So this summer we provided over 16,000 meals and snacks to kids in parks and libraries and apartment buildings. So it's through the generosity of our community that we're able to do some of those things that we do. So all the grocery stores that are welcoming us next weekend are all in the fight with us. So we appreciate it. We hope we see you out at one of the local stores. If you don't have if you don't want to donate and you want to spend some time, I know Jerry Lynn's looking for volunteers. So, but thanks for all your help and all you do for us, and see you on Saturday the 15th.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah,
really appreciate
thank you.
it. And it may be called the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry, but that's just what it's called. Every council member up here is involved. They stand at the buckets. They go to all the locations with me. It's been a tradition. We call it the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry, but it's the city of Federal Way. And Jerry Lynn was mentioned, and she's there with her entire family. And we've got human services folks. We've got, like I said, the deputy mayor and all the members of the council, and it's becoming, one of those great traditions. One of the great news, I haven't really had a chance to talk to Jerry Lynn about this, is Safeway reversed their policy. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about the locations, about where you're going to see the council members and the community members and all the volunteers that Jerry Lynn is able to get together. And so these are the locations, not 2 weeks from this coming Saturday. The Fred Meyer over on 21st Avenue, Campus Way and 21st, or roughly. The grocery outlet on Pacific Highway, right next to the mailbox, or right next to the U.S. Post Office. The Safeway on 320th, and 11th or 12th, right there. And the Safeway on 336th, right next door to the Fred Meyer. The Safeway on Military Road and 288th. That's why the Safeways were a very pivotal part of our program. The Walmart grocery store on 314th, which is what we refer to as the older Walmart, and then the big Walmart, the superstore, on down there at 345th and 16th. So that's where we're at. I also want to, we are really fortunate to have Councilmember Duclos, who was the executive director of the Multi-Service Center for years. She recruited me as a young and, yes, thinner young attorney. I'll say it for you, Councilor. Councilmember Duclos, would you like to talk a little bit about what a program like this means for the Multi-Service Center?
Well, as you know, we have a lot of poor, and we serve more than just Federal Way. We serve a larger area than that. And people come in, and they go to the food bank, and they get to take food that they're going to use for their families and their children. And it helps them, if they're on welfare, or if they're on low income, or if they've lost a job or whatever. It helps them feed the family and feed the children so that they can use their money for other things. And I know it's now they've got a whole different process than when I was there, but it's still, it's a very worthwhile thing. And a lot of people donate, and I know there's a thing I got in the mail that to put stuff out by your mailbox on a certain day and with a note on it that it's for the food drive. But it really helps people, especially low-income people or people with, part-time jobs or whatever, and they have several children and they're trying to raise their family, and it gives them a good, it gives them some kind of food that they might not have or be able to buy, and help with the children. So it's a very, very worthwhile project and program, and I was proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Deanie. And yeah, the program, we one of the many things that Waste Management, our community partners, and the folks that handle recycling and waste for the city, they sponsor Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry. And so be looking, I think it's that same week that they will give a flyer to make sure they explain exactly how they're going to be picking it up.
They already have the flyer out.
Very good.
It's a big
Awesome.
one, yeah.
Yeah, and they do a great job on that. And then they do, we'll have Waste Management come after this and give a report on how many pounds of food and how much cash, and we'll have Jerry Lynn and her team give a report as well. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I try to hit. Obviously, we're going to go to each one of those locations, so I hope to see you there. Okay, now the next item is Proclamation for Constitution Week, and I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you very much. Is Sally Jarvis here? Would you mind going to the podium, please? Thank you very much. Proclamation for Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd. Whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation. And whereas Public Law Number 915, signed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1956, guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th as Constitution Day. Whereas celebrations are to emphasize citizens' responsibilities for protecting and defending the Constitution as we preserve it for posterity, to inform the people that the Constitution is the basis for America's great heritage and the foundation for our way of life, and to encourage the study of historical events which led to the framing of the Constitution in September 1787. Now therefore, we, the undersigned mayor and city council members of the City of Federal Way, do hereby proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2018 to be Constitution Week in Federal Way, and we ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 and reflect on our heritage of freedom. Signed this 4th day of September in 2018.
Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, City Council members, and ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege once again to accept this proclamation for Constitution Week on behalf of Lakota Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution. As I've mentioned to you before, the DAR is much more than a lineage organization. Yes, each of its members can trace her ancestry to a person who supported the American colonies during the American Revolution. Some of them were soldiers, some were civil servants, some donated goods and services such as food, uniforms, and so forth. Some of these patriot ancestors, as we call them, were women. Did you know that Sybil Ludington made a ride similar to Paul Revere? Hers was 2 years later, and she was only 16 at the time. She rode twice as far, 40 miles, through the woods, at night. She was accosted by a highwayman and had to beat him off with a stick she carried. Since our organization in 1890, more than 1 million women have joined DAR. Some of these names you would recognize from history, including First Lady Caroline Scott Harrison, who was the first President General of the DAR. But along with those well-known names, there are many, many American women whose names you have never heard, but they have been quietly serving their communities to preserve American history, foster patriotism, and secure America's future through better education. They are from all walks of life: teachers, secretaries, doctors, politicians, homemakers, internet developers, just to name a few. From the very beginning, service has been a big part of DAR. The Constitution is the basis for our entire system of government, and is an important part of our history. It can be changed when necessary, but it cannot be changed easily, and that's by design. That is part of the plan and foresight of our forefathers, who knew that it should never be subject to the whims of whoever might be in office at any given time. We must respect the Constitution even when we fall short of our aspirations. We must appreciate the freedoms and rights that it guarantees and ensure that our citizens and our government understand, appreciate, and uphold it at all times. The history of this great nation must be taught to the children in our schools to prepare them for adulthood and to provide a framework for understanding the past. Without the Constitution, we become a government of men rather than a government of laws. Our Constitution assures us a peaceful transfer of power to leaders whom we, the people, have elected. It also sets out certain rights of the people and grants specific rights to the government. Our country endures in large part because of the Constitution written by our forefathers. These men, while great leaders, were not perfect, nor did they claim to be. Would anyone here make that claim? It is quite fitting that we take this anniversary of the Constitution to reflect on and honor this document and those who wrote it. Thank you for this proclamation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sally. All right, before we move into the Mayor's Emerging Issues and Report, there was an article in last week's paper regarding Department of Retirement Systems, or DRS. I'll turn it over to regarding an audit finding. I wanted to make sure that we gave a report on that to the council and to the community. And we have Ade Arulo, our finance director, as well as our the head of our HR department, Gene Stanley, who will be assisting. So can you please give us some background, Ade, about what this was about?
Good morning, good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor and Council. Just to be clear, the audit is pretty much just straight to the retirement. It has nothing to do with our financial report, the CAFA report. It has no bearing on potential debt funding. So it is not related to our financial reporting. And some of the things that were mentioned by the in the newspaper and DRS also are things that are so technical that caution needs to be taken. What most of us, somebody like Gene or Tony from our payroll have been working in the system for almost 30 years. Some of these things are really ridiculous. I think they are saying, DRS is saying that we have temporary employees. The guideline is they work for 5 months and you're supposed to see if they work for 5 months and they're able to do 70 hours. By reading their report, you are supposed to now make that determination at the beginning of the year. And if you have this year 5 employees that are temporary and you end up bringing 7, if you determine 5 are eligible, what do you do with the other 2? They reference in terms of the payment for our officers, they are the one, when they did audit of 2002, to do it in certain way. Then they came back and said, well, maybe their auditor didn't factor this in and didn't factor that in. And we should pay for those officers. And I'm telling them, say, okay, how do I explain to my council, based on your recommendation to do it this way, now to do it differently now, and pay for the people that have retired, how do I go after them and get that money back? Especially when it's your screw up. I mean, somebody needs to stand up for the citizens too. And that is what this is all about. If they gave us one advice, which we followed, now they're saying that advice or that person didn't fully understand or didn't fully, factor everything in. So I should pay for those employees that have retired and go after them and get the money back. See? So I'm supposed to go after the retiree to pay the city back? Can you see that? When it is your mistake, that is the DRS that gave the opinion at that time.
And today, did you draft a letter to the Department of Retirement Systems?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did send a letter to them and say, stating that I cannot, again, I will pass that letter on to the council to say, well, that is not really proper. Yes, we will do whatever you are, but how do we do this? When you gave this advice and we follow it, now you are saying your auditor is the one that messed up because it didn't factor this in, it didn't factor that in. Great. Why should the taxpayer be the one that will pay the penalty?
All right, Council, I wanted to provide, how many employees are we talking about here?
For this particular one, for the temporary employee, we're talking about 11 employees. We're talking about employees that earn between $11 and maybe $13 an hour.
Yeah. I want to let council know and the public know, we reached out to the Mirror and thought we had an agreement to hold that story for 1 week so we could provide this background information, and the story ran nevertheless. So we are working with the Mirror to make sure they've got a more correct and that explains some of this information that obviously is a little complicated, has some history to it, and we'll make sure, we'll ask. We were told initially this was going to be a two-part story, so hopefully they'll run the second part to where we can make sure the record is convinced. This is the paper of record for the city. So we'll make sure that we will endeavor to correct that record. Council, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Mayor's emerging issues and report. Police Department back to school safety report. All the kids and 23,000 plus kids returned to school today, and one of them was my own little guy and had a great day. And so this is about school zone reminders, and we've got Brigham Schultz, our lieutenant, will outline some of the safety issues. Lieutenant.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. And for those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Lieutenant Schultz. I'm the supervisor of our traffic unit, and I've been asked to come in and give you a quick back-to-school reminder. A lot of people have been in summertime mode and have been doing things, and it's a good reminder to go over some of this basic back-to-school safety material. So with that in mind, today is the first day of the 2018-19 school year. And as children are returning to school, it's important to remember that success for our students revolves around them making it to and from school safely. So I'm going to go over briefly some things to be aware of as a parent or a student, and what can families and students do to reduce risk while commuting to and from school. And what does the Federal Way Police Department do to help ensure student safety? I wanted to go over some statistics with everybody. Walking or bicycling remains a frequently used method of transportation to school for families. According to the Washington Traffic Safety Commission, between 2012 and 2016, 15.6% of all traffic fatalities and 14.9% of serious injury collisions were pedestrians. During the same time frame, 717 bicyclists were seriously injured and 81 were killed. During the first 6 months of 2017, 13 fatalities and 101 were seriously injured. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, between 2006 and 2015, 301 school-aged children aged 18 or younger were killed in school transportation-related crashes. For those parents who have driving members of the family that are heading to school, some statistics for them to keep in mind are motor vehicle collisions are the leading cause of unintentional deaths between ages 16 and 25 years old. Young drivers face an increased crash risk due to both their inexperience and immaturity, the lack of skills and experience necessary to recognize and respond to risks appropriately, and age-related immaturity is a key factor in dangerous decision-making on the road. From 2012 to 2016, an average of 61 young drivers less than 20 years old were involved in fatal collisions. Between 2012 and 2014, 32% of fatal collisions in Washington state involved young drivers, even though they only comprise of 13% of licensed drivers on the road. It's a kind of a staggering statistic. So what can parents do? Parents obviously have a huge role in students' back-to-school safety. Be aware of how your children are getting to school and who they are with. If possible, always have a trusted adult accompanying a young child to the bus stop or to school if possible. Discuss the appropriate safety concerns, such as crossing the street, waiting for school crossing guards, watching for traffic with your child. Make sure your children know what route to take to school and that their parents are familiar with an associated time frame for students to make it to and from school. Wear jackets or clothing that increases visibility, particularly in inclement weather, especially bicyclists that share the roadway with traffic. And parents with driving students, talk with student drivers about safe driving and obeying the restrictions on intermediate driver's license. I think parents sometimes underestimate the value that they are to the police department with enforcing the restrictions on the intermediate driver's license. If they're not familiar with it, it's worth their time to just quickly review that and be aware of that. Have conversations with driving students about the dangers of impaired driving and that there is zero tolerance in Washington state. Be familiar with RCW 4661-503, that's the under 21 DUI statute, and emphasize how dangerous mixing any amount of alcohol or drugs in driving is. Remind student drivers that distracted driving, even for a moment, is unacceptable. Consider adding applications such as AT&T Drive Mode on smartphones to reduce the temptation for students to engage in distracted driving. Probably one of the smartest things that parents can do to help keep their children safe while they're driving. And for people who are not familiar with what those apps are, haven't heard of them before, I've got a quick video here that can describe.
Very important, right, Jennifer? We appreciate it. Well, beginning September 1st, texting and driving in Texas will be illegal. But even if you're not worried about a ticket, texting while driving makes you 23 times more likely to get into a car accident.
And this morning, consumer expert Amy Davis is sharing some apps to help you or your children break the texting and driving habit.
Yeah, you know, between emails and texts and phone calls, distracted driving is a very real temptation. You hear that ping or notification that you've received a new text, and you feel compelled to pick up your phone and check it. But with these 3 free apps I found, you won't have to see or hear those incoming messages.
AT&T has developed an app called Drive Mode, and you don't even have to be an AT&T customer to use it on your iPhone or Android. It silences all incoming texts and sends auto-reply messages to people letting them know you're behind the wheel. The app automatically turns on when you're driving and going at least 15 miles an hour. Drive Safely works similarly just for Androids and Blackberries, but you do have to turn it on and then off. It announces callers by name and reads text messages or emails aloud and automatically sends a response.
Here's how it works. I asked our producer Shannon to send me a text message.
New message from Shannon Summers. Hey, what time are you coming back to the station?
So I got your message right after I texted you, and it said, I heard your message read aloud for free by www.drivesafe.ly. I'm driving and I can't reply right now. It was nice because I knew that you got it. It's kind of like a receipt.
The third app is Lifesaver for parents who worry about their children texting and driving. Parents can remotely lock their kid's phone while the car is in motion. Once the car stops, the phone will unlock.
You can also set that Lifesaver app to tell you when your child has left one place, and then you'll get an alert when they arrive at their next destination. We're linking you to all of these free apps on click2houston.com in the consumer section.
So just a few apps that might be very, very helpful to parents as their kids are returning to school and help them monitor what's going on. So what is the police department doing? We take back to school very safely, particularly in our traffic unit. Federal Way Police Department regularly conducts extra patrols in neighborhoods and especially school zones. You'll see our motorcycle officers out there and patrol officers showing presence and also stopping vehicles that are going over the speed limit. Police officers use speed measuring devices like radar or laser to confirm speeding violations and may issue tickets to the violators. The traffic unit closely reviews and issues infractions for school zone speeding with the photo enforcement zones, which are Sagali, Panther Lake Elementary, and Twin Lakes Elementary. The police officers watch carefully for distracted drivers and issue tickets when appropriate. and we are in continual communication with school staff, security, and residents who live by schools to get valuable information on traffic safety issues that arise. With that in mind, hopefully they'll have fun and have a safe year back to school.
All right, Council, any questions for the Lieutenant? Thank you, Brigham. Appreciate all your work. Okay, on to community events. We had the Flavor of Federal Way and Multicultural Festival on August 18th. That's actually the picture of it. I think they had almost 1,000 people there, maybe in excess of 1,000. It was well over. I'd like to thank Jerry Lynn. I'd like to thank, Greg. Yeah, the chair of our, thank you, Greg, the chair of our Diversity Commission. And it was absolutely just a phenomenal success. And it was something that was in planning for well over a year. I think it was contemplated last year where they put it all together, and the wait was worth it. It was absolutely amazing, and really, it was just great food, great organizations, from around the city, and it was at Town Square Park there, and you could see it's right next to the parking garage, and the food was too good. And it went on for hours and hours. So it was a great event. Town Square Park also hosted movie night on Saturday, August 25th. That's just another great tradition that we have started. And actually, Greg, did you want to, Greg Baruso, or did you want to address the crowd in regard to the success of that event? You want to come on up just for a second, since we've got you here? You're about ready to escape, and before you do, I wanted to...
No, I wasn't. Thanks, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, and citizens. Yes, I thought that maybe the folks that attended, it was a well-attended event. It was something that we needed here, Federal Way. As you can see, we did have over probably 1,000, probably 1,100 people. And I know that the one of the food trucks ran out of food. They served about 500, they said. Another one ran out about 3:30, the barbecue folks. So when you count that, and it was a great day. The haze went away, sun was out. It was kind of a perfect day, but I think it was very good success, and I thank everyone for attending, and the citizens and council members and those that attended. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. We're going to do it again next year.
Awesome. Great. Yes, we are. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, and then the next Saturday, on the 25th, we had two events. We had Run with the Cops on August 25th, and that was a great event that, that our police officers and their dedicated personnel raised money for Special Olympics, and they just did a great event, and started at the community center in the morning. And then later on, we had the 14th Annual Lions Club Car Show, and that's a lot of fun. That was over at the Commons, and right next to the Farmers Market, and just a great, bringing together of the community for the car show. Was actually, seems like it's getting bigger and bigger. There are a lot. Yeah, I actually was going through, several of us were there and going through all the cars, and I brought my little guy and was explaining the significance of the the older cars and just how things have markedly changed. So it was a lot of fun and great opportunity for the community to come together. Okay, council committee reports. It's something we're starting now to where we used to have our council committee reports long after our business was done, but also long after our attendees were gone as well. So why don't we start with Councilmember Duclos, Chair Duclos of our Finance or FEDRAC Committee.
Thank you. I'll have a very short report because we didn't have a meeting in August because of vacation schedules. We were, however, supposed to have the special committee, the ad hoc committee meeting, and there's been a conflict with another council committee. So we've decided to postpone that until October 8th at 5 p.m. And so don't anybody else schedule anything on Monday, that date, because we'd like to get finished with this. Okay. And we're also looking at November 14th. I was hoping to have maybe 4 meetings to handle different things. I also had asked the Chamber Board of Directors to take a look at what we've done so far, which is, just throwing out ideas, and to see if they have any ideas, and to have them attend the next 2 meetings. So great. That's about it.
Okay.
We're solvent, I know that much.
Very good. All right, thank you. Councilmember Moore, or Chair Moore of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. We will be having a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. at City Hall in the High-Levels room. We will be discussing a LTAC proposed budget that we'll be doing, and we'll also be welcoming potentially, upon confirmation, we'll be welcoming 2 new members to the LTAC meeting, and for that, that'll be it. Thank you.
All right. Chair Kopang of Land Use and Transportation.
Thank you. I just, with kids going back to school, one of the other things that happens around this time of year is construction on the roads comes to an end. Well, we have a major project that has been dragging on for way too long, and it's the final improvement to Highway 99. And I just want to give a quick report. I talked to Desiree Winkler to confirm this information, but we have got what's left to do is to do the final paving in the southbound lanes. The northbound lanes have been completed, as is the median. We've got to curb the medians. We got to put in irrigation and plantings in the medians, and then put sod in the planters, and then there's going to be some property restoration work that needs to be done, and then striping will be completed 21 days after the final paving has been completed. So we are nearing the end of what has been a marathon project, and one that I think everyone in the city will be happy to see completed. But again, the date for that is probably going to be the first week of November at this point. So we're going to have a little bit more patience through September and October, but in November, we should be able to drive Pacific Highway from the southernmost part of Federal Way to the northernmost part and enjoy a easy trip. So anyway, thank you for that. I think along with getting our street lights synchronized, which that's a project that's coming. We're working on that, but again, traffic is very important to the LUTC committee. So anyway, thank you.
And now, Chair Johnson of the Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really briefly, the Homelessness Task Force is moving right along, so thanks to Yarden and Sherry Edwards and others for their leadership in that. So they presented to us last month, and they will again next week. Our meeting is Tuesday the 11th, I believe, so at 5 to 7 p.m. here in City Hall in the High-Levels room. I did want to acknowledge, and speaking of service, the passing of John McCain last week, really quickly. Only the 31st person in our country to lie in state, so wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Well said. Okay, now for the most important part of our evening, citizen comment or public comment. I've got several pink sheets. I think I've got a couple headed my way right now. Okay, great, thank you very much. And we've got public comment for 3 minutes unless they're speaking for 5 individuals who are present. Ahmed Shigo, and then Uba Eden, and then Uba Mohammed, and then Amy Adams, and then Hector Martinez. So Ahmed Shigo? All right.
Good evening, the council, the mayor, and the citizens of Federal Way. I'm a resident of Federal Way since 2007. Beautiful. I moved here from Seattle to build the life over here with my children. A couple of them born here in Federal Way, and now they go to school here, and a couple of them graduated school and they go to college. And recently I had on August 1st, my wife called me at work, and she said, I'm in the Safeway, and this man is harassing me, and he threw my food. And he told her that I have a privilege. My wife is one of those women who cover, and he didn't like that. So he threw her food, and by the argument, the 320 Safeway police called the police. The police came, and she doesn't recall the names of the police, but there was one nice gentleman, she said, Officer Murphy. But the other police who were there, one of them, he immediately profiled her. He said, did you come from across the street, those apartments? And that's where a lot of immigrants live. That's profiling. He doesn't know us. He doesn't know my wife. We have a businesses in City of Federal Way. And I work for Mr. Wang Trung. I'm a program manager in the Department of Social and Health Services. I felt bad. I felt that, and I don't want, he asked my wife her ID. He didn't ask the other man his ID. He told my wife that he can arrest her. And she said, for what? He said, because there was another woman who was standing there who was with the gentleman. She said she pushed him. My wife, she didn't push on a 7-year-old man. She will not. So I really want the chief to review that case. It happened August 1st, 4:15 at the 320. And I want to, if he put it in the file of anything for my wife of disturbance in the community, I really want to be removed. And that's why we're here. We live here. We vote. I'm a citizen. You guys see me in the election. I was participating. And I want to live like as everybody. You know? All right?
All right, thank you very much. All right, and then Deputy Chief Neal, can I have you follow up with Mr. Skigo and Shigo? And maybe get the details of that. And what we'll do is the chief and myself and you, or the chief and I will review it. But before they leave today, before you guys leave today, I'd like Deputy Chief Neal to sit down with you, get some of the details, and make sure that I can, put my eyes on this report as well. Thank you very much for letting us know about this, and I'm sorry that happened to you. All right. All right, and then we have Uba Aiden.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councils, and citizens. My name is Uba Aden. I'm here tonight in support of my friend, who, as you just hear, her husband. I've lived here in the United States over 24 years, and coming to United States was the land of opportunity, freedom, social justice. Literally, you can have a life dream. And when you hear cases like this, it takes you back. I understand that we are in a crazy political timing at this moment. And it's almost like everywhere you go, and especially when you're wearing, this is what we call hijab, you're literally from miles, somebody can see you. You are always on the caution since 2017. It's more than before, the way I experience. And you hear something like this in Federal Way. It's a beautiful city, and it's now more than ever more diverse. You will see all of these different backgrounds. So I'm hoping that the city will be welcoming and have to look in the eyes with more, everyone is the same here, and we all deserve a community that respects, and respect has no boundaries, color, or religion. We should all remember we are human, and we should respect everyone. And as a woman, when I walk on the streets of Federal Way, I should not feel threatened. If a cop walks up to me, I have a teenager, I tell him, respect authority. How can I tell him to respect authority when you hear something like that? And then he will respond me differently. How can I respect that when they disrespect you, mother? So we need to remember, the cops, the police, we love them. They do a great job, but we wanted them to respect us back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I couldn't have said that better myself, and it's actually in the motto of the country of the United States of America, e pluribus unum, that from many we are one. And I think that we have one of the most diverse communities, and you said it all, and it was very articulate. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here for your friend as well. Uba Muhammad. And then Amy Adams.
Hello. Yes. My name is Uba. I actually grew up in Seattle, Washington. I moved to Federal Way. I bought my first home here. I am a first-time homeowner, first one in my family to buy a house. So we are pretty excited about that. I came here because they invited me, but I'm glad I showed up because I get to meet all my councilmen and my mayor and everybody that is here. I did miss the cultural party, but I am also a big advocate when it comes to that. I went down to Seattle. I grew up here, so it is kind of disheartening when she told me what happened to her, and I'm glad that you did ask the police to look it up. One of the things is because I grew up in Seattle and we've moved here in 1992, we are the first Somali family to came. Everybody after that have came through my house. So to see that people have grew so much, and now because Seattle have become so expensive for renting and buying, that you are going to have a large Somali population. You already have a large Somali population, but it's even going to be larger now because Tequila is also pushing people out. So we're hoping that Federal Way later in life will not push people even farther, right? As you know, we progress and we move on. For me, it's just to say I'm glad to be part of Federal Way. I am going to be more of a community member and spoke more and so on. I hope that you guys welcome us and that you listen to our concerns as the time goes on. Uba couldn't have said better. Respect goes both ways. Authority goes both ways. And I actually am even a little bit farther than here. So a 320 area has more diverse. I'm more towards 370, and that's even more secluded. So far, my neighbors have made me feel very welcome to a point that people have knocked on my house and introduced themselves, and I'm glad that they are that open, and I am an open person. But as a community, when an incident happens, is also something good can come out of it. And today that we showed up will be a good thing because we are going to be a little bit more proactive and be involved. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. You know, a few years ago, I issued a proclamation making this a welcoming city, and I think we issued the proclamation. We'll take a look back at that and take a look at that language, and we'll see about reissuing that. It never hurts to, you know, really send that message out. And I'm a firm believer in making sure that something good could come from this. So, Deputy Chief Neal, who's in the back of the room, is going to connect with you before you leave tonight. So, thank you. All right, Amy Adams.
Hi, I'm Amy Adams. I've lived in Federal Way for 22 years. My kids were raised here. I've taught here. Today was day one. I'm exhausted. But I'm here, I'm wearing my hat. I'm here to represent Decatur High School music program. Music from Federal Way schools is thriving, and I have a huge 10-minute speech on the value of that. I'll save it because I only have 2.5. Some of you actually know my daughter, Elizabeth Adams. She chaired the Fed Factor this year. So she's pretty amazing. But under the direction of Jeff Chang, our Decatur Jazz Band and Wind Ensemble has achieved not just, we're great for Federal Way, they've been recognized internationally. And they now have an opportunity to perform at an international jazz festival in Taichung City in Taiwan. And why I'm here today, and I actually have a paper copy of a letter that I have written, and it outlines the details of what is going on when they go. It is not about performing, they're about outreach. So why I'm here today is I want to talk to you about what we would like is we would love to know that we're sending these 19 amazing students, not just to perform in Taiwan, not just to meet with the families at the School for the Visually Impaired in an underserved area of Taiwan. We would like to know that we go as ambassadors from Federal Way, the city. This event is both sponsored and supported by Dr. Tammy Campbell and our school board. We've received not just their sponsorship, but their some monetary support. Our youth are doing great things, and to know that their city supports them as they send them off would be fantastic. Why is this great for Federal Way? It does show our community that you are standing behind our kids. It's just 19 of us that are going, and 5 adults, and I get to go as well. So honestly, that is, in a nutshell, everything I've laid out. Mr. Moore has a copy of the letter. I know Ms. Honda has a copy of the letter. I do have more here. And like I said, just outlines the details of what our students will be doing as they represent the city in October. We leave October 17th. I would love to stay longer, but like I said, I'm exhausted. I've got to go home and prepare for the next day of 21 first graders. I'd stick around and tell you some more amazing things about these kids. And I think, my contact information is on that letter, as well as I can be reached at the federal schools at any time. Amy Adams, I'm on the school contact list. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan, for inviting me to speak today.
Thank you, Amy. All right, Hector Martinez. And after Hector, we have Dana Holloway, and then Lynn Idahosa.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, the community. I used to live in Federal Way about a year ago, but I just moved to Puyallup, and I'm here to talk about the moratorium on marijuana businesses, actually. So I really just wanted to come from a different information and approach than I think what you guys have heard from before. I have worked in this industry for about 3 years now, actually, and so it has been probably the best career that I've had presently. I left home when I was like 16 from Florida, and I moved up here, so the company that I work for has really provided me advancement to actually go to school now. I'm at Green River College, and I'm just about 1/4 away from completing my AA. And so I just really wanted you guys to hear just a perspective from me of just like, this business has given me an opportunity that I never would have been able to in any other industry that I've been in. I've worked in retail clothing. I've worked for Costco, actually. That's where I was previously with this, and that's where I wanted to create a career with, was Costco. But I had this opportunity to work for them, and it's really grown from there. So I know you guys are very nervous just about like the area and just how having marijuana businesses impacts the general area and the neighborhood. I actually live currently right next door to an actual store, and there's 4 different stores within 1/4 of a mile of us. And it's actually, the area has gotten better. Like when I first moved in, the apartment manager mentioned to us about how there was a lot of car robberies in our apartment just because it's not gated. And I've been there about a year now, and there's nothing that's going on there now. So across the street from our store was an empty vacant lot that a lot of homeless people camped out on and lived, and police were called there multiple times. But that actually lot now is getting converted into a commercial business use. So there's like about 10 different like automotive businesses that are moving in there. So it's brightened up the area, and it's just a lot cleaner now. So I really just appreciate that, and a lot of that is really just because those businesses are in there now. So also just the security of the stores as well. Like the area is just much more secure. There's lots of lighting in all the stores. I know a lot of issues are with minors getting sold to in the parking lots and stuff like that, but most of our stores have very strict guidelines on how we handle those. We do not allow any kind of sales like that. We do not have any vertical IDs that are allowed in the store, because that just prevents any minors at all. So I think it'd be a very good opportunity for you guys to really just get some other information and facts about this before you make a decision.
All right. Thank you, Hector.
Thank you so much.
Dana Holloway.
Good evening. I'm Dana Holloway, and I'm commenting in support of Agenda Item 6C, the Multi-Jurisdictional Reimbursement Agreement for the SeaTac Airport Impact Study. It's up pages 40 to 60 in your packet, and the scope is to study the impacts that the current and ongoing airport operations have on the quality of life associated with air traffic noise, public health, traffic, congestion, parking in residential areas, pedestrian access to and around the airport, public safety and crime within the cities, effects on residential and non-residential property values, and economic development opportunities in the cities of SeaTac, Burien, Des Moines, Tukwila, Federal Way, Normandy Park, and other impacted neighborhoods. I request the council members vote to approve this agreement, which includes the City of Federal Way's portion of the matching funds from the proviso, which is about $70,000, rounding up to about $800. That would be in 2 installments, January of 2019 and January of 2020. the installments be like $35,000, not $70,000. The funding for the CTAC Airport Impact Study is supposed to be included in tonight's mayor's proposal for the 2019-2020 biennium budget. It is critical to support this impact. If for whatever reason the study does not happen, or Federal Way chooses not to participate, we may never get the money from the state for another study. The last study was done in 1997, and the Port of Seattle said it didn't have good, they didn't believe the methodology was very well, so it didn't help. This is timely since the Port of Seattle is doing their sustainable airport master plan, which doubles international flights and triples air cargo flights. The impact SeaTac Airport has on our city, our residents, and businesses has continually increased since 2009, but we need facts and data from the study to document what we already know and the recommendations for mitigating any negative effects. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. All right, next we've got Lynn Idahosa speaking on behalf of 5 people, so she has 5 minutes. And then Betty Taylor after that.
Hi, thank you. I was going to ask you about that because with pregnancy brain, I forgot whether I checked the 5-minute box. So thank you. But good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. As you know, I am a precinct committee officer here in Federal Way, but none of the opinions I share here tonight or any other night reflect the opinions of the district, just my personal opinions. Tonight's meeting is the beginning of our public budget discussion, and the first I have personally attended here in Federal Way, and as usual, I've been doing some research. One area that tends to always get an increase in funding is public safety, and I noticed that Chief Wong is always on the hunt for new funding and applying for grants to supplement his budget, which I appreciate. That's an excellent way to supplement the city's budget during this time. I would like to ask that all of you also continue to do that. What are areas in your budget that are underfunded? Perhaps there you can identify areas where newer issues here in our city that have rapid rise can be addressed and creative funding options. Especially with so much discussion about how much money the city needs, I believe it's important to show the wins and great strides you're making as elected officials by sharing that transparently with the community in a way that we all understand. Moving on, as many of you know, on the anniversary of Eric Garner's death, a case the Hunter family has spoken here many times about was settled by a jury. The family was awarded $640,000, and interviews after the mayor and the chief of police stated that they were appealing the case. I want you all to consider something. We may differ in opinions on the facts of the case, but as the mayor and chief of police and city council, you guys have a much greater obligation to your citizens than just to your staff. Do you think about how insulting it may feel as an upstanding member of the city to feel wronged, go through the whole trial, have a jury side with you, and city officials still insinuate that the verdict was wrong? At what cost will you continue to stand behind your employees and not your citizens? If this is any other type of case, such as fraud or embezzlement, once a jury has concluded, the city stands behind that choice. Racial bias and civil rights violations, essentially cases involving questions of racism, are the only ones that any city has continued to stand behind an employee found guilty of wrongdoing, even when there's video evidence of wrongdoing. Prior to the verdict, it was completely acceptable and understandable to take that stance, but it is no longer. According to your offices, this case has already cost the city of Federal Way $110,000, so that drives the total cost of this case to $750,000 or $750,000. How much can we afford to spend on this? This case is a great example of why you all should consider a police accountability review board. That independent review board could have reviewed the case versus the family suing the city. The family that spoke here tonight, they wanted to be heard regarding the case at Safeway. That is an issue where they have an opinion that the city can come to the table and have a review board that is bipartisan, completely separate, come to an agreement about what's right on both sides without going to litigation. That's the point of it. Regardless, it would save the city money. Everything I presented shows that they would not be paid. I can't really see, especially from a PR standpoint, where there's a negative in something like that. It would only add value to the city. Another point I wanted to touch on tonight is regarding the last meeting I attended in July. There were several members of council that said that they welcomed public interaction and discussion, and statements were made that the appropriate way to have dialogue is email. I sent an email with files and lots of information, and I did get a response from Yarden, which I really appreciate him looking into a lot of the issues I brought up. But Yarden only speaks for the mayor's office, so I got only a response from Councilmember Coping, and another council member said they would read it, but I didn't hear anything else. So if that is your preferred method of communication, and that's been stated a lot, I'd really like to get some communication back when I take the time to write these things, or tell me another way that's best to communicate with you outside of public comment where there can be a dialogue. That's just what the council asked, so that's what I did. So I'd like to know what another way would be if that's not the best way. Because that's not how I felt, because it's been like 6 weeks. So, yeah. And there's been responses between Yarden and me that everyone was CC'd on and no one else responded. It seems like there is kind of a barrier with public communication, and I'd like to just look into that. If there's a way to have some type of requirement to make sure that people feel responded to. If I take the time to come here, I should feel responded to by my elected officials. That's very important to me, and I think other people here too. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. You know, Lynn, there's one thing I would just point out is Yarden Weidenfeld is one of the hardest working people in government, and I think his very comprehensive response may have felt like to some of the council members but I understand you want to hear from them and they've heard that, but I do want to say that Yarden went into pretty great depth in some of the answers, and so I think you got another one today. So, but anyway, thank you for your dialogue. We very much appreciate it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, now Betty Taylor. And Betty's going to speak for 5 minutes, or can speak for 5 minutes, if she's got the signatures.
Can I say something before? Yeah.
Well, it's Betty's birthday today. Hey! Happy birthday, Betty.
Thank you.
So I'm down here because we're going to be talking about National Night Out in Town Square Park, which was something that Betty Taylor came up with about 2 years ago. We were at a meeting at Decatur High School, and she asked the mayor if she could do this, and he said yes. And I said I would help, and both Claire Wilson and I have been helping. So Betty would like to say a few words about Town Square Park and our National Night Out event.
Okay, so I believe that National Night Out should not be a separate event. It should be a separate event. Now, so basically in August, we have a lot of events, which is we have National Night Out, we have Friendship Day, and then this year we have the Flavor Federal Way. And so with those three, and last year at National Night Out, we did have a lot of international dancers, we had entertainers, and we had food. This year, because of the fact that we knew that there was going to be a flavor, and we knew that the thing was going to be like a ethnico and international, we decided to go on a different route. We wanted to focus on basically what does Night Out focus on? Families, children, people, communities, getting together. Our main point was to focus on those areas in the city which did not have Night Out in their neighborhood. Basically, the surrounding areas by the Town Square Park, like Walmart. There's like 4 or 5 apartment complexes right up in that area. They don't have Night Out in our city. We have 96,000 people in the city, and it hurts me to hear that only maybe 30 neighborhoods participated in a 96,000 population. And so Night Out, we are not competing. This is not a competition. We are doing this because of community, because we want to bring people together, families together. This year we did really good. We're really proud of what happened, we had roadblocks, really bumps in the road. But you know, that's going to happen. But you got to get through them bumps. You got to get through them bumps and keep it pushing. So basically, and that's what we did. We had bumps and lumps, but we just kept it pushing. And so we did it excellent. We did excellent and stuff, and the community was happy. We had the video game truck for the children. We had Fred bus, and we had an MC, we had a DJ, and so basically, and we had vendors too, but it wasn't international. We did have some Mexican dancers, but we wanted to focus on community and people.
I just want to thank Betty, and I also want to thank Susan for the work they did. And I think what we're trying to create is a sense of community, and that there are many people who have residences here in Federal Way, but don't necessarily feel like they're part of something bigger or part of a community. And that some of us have neighborhoods, and some of us have cul-de-sacs, and some of us have families that we know because we've been here for a long time. But many of us are new here, and we don't really know folks. We really don't have a place to gather, and we really don't have a place to feel like we're part of a community. And so Town Square Park is that place. I don't think there's ever too much that can be done when we're talking about bringing people together. And I think, again, it's around creating community and giving people a place to feel like they're part of something better and bigger. And that's what Federal Way does. So thank you both to Betty, and thanks to Susan for this year's National Night Out.
We would also like to thank a lot of people. First of all, the Federal Way Lions Club came through and cooked hot dogs for us. We had a donation of 200 hot dogs, and we served those in about an hour and ran out. So we had well over 200 people there this year. Last year we served 300 people because we had 300 hot dogs and hot dog buns, and ran out then too. And Betty's family came through real big time. We had door prizes for people. We had the video truck. We had the Fred bus. The fire department came. Our police department came. The mayor came. The chief of police came to visit. The superintendent, Tammy Campbell, came, and it was just fun. So we will be doing this again next year. We'll be seeking more community input and more community help. It's a lot of work to put it on, and it's fun. So if you don't have a neighborhood that has a night out event, and I've lived in Federal Way since 1979, in 4 different neighborhoods, and it's only in the last 4 years that I've had a neighborhood that has put on a National Night Out event. I've had to go to my mother-in-law's neighborhood for many years for the event. You're welcome to come to Town Square Park next year, the first Tuesday of the year, probably around 4:30, 5 o'clock. But I'd like to thank Betty for her vision, because this really, truly is Betty Taylor's vision. And happy birthday, Betty.
On the last note, we need night out at the park. We need it. We don't want it taken away. Please, we need it.
All right.
So.
Thank you very much. It was a great event. Good job. And happy birthday, Betty. Okay, now we have the consent agenda. These items have, actually, I don't have any more pink sheets. Is there anybody else who'd like to talk? All right, just want to make sure. Thank you very much. It was great to hear from everybody. Consent agenda. These items have gone through committee and can be passed all at once. I'll go ahead and read the items, and then after I've read them, I'll ask whether a council member will want to pull an item for separate consideration. Consent agenda. Item A, minutes for the August 14th, 2018 regular and special meetings. Item B, King County Veterans Seniors and Human Services Levy. Item C, King County Registered Sex Offender Cost Reimbursement Agreement. Council, out of items A, B, and C, any items that you would want pulled for separate consideration? All right, hearing none. Deputy Mayor Honda, do you have a motion?
I move approval of items A through C on the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The matters pass unanimously. Okay, now on to council business. Now, this is the time where I will be presenting a preliminary budget. And is Lynn still here? Lynn Idahosa? So this is not meant to be this is not meant to be an exhaustive listing of the budget. We're going to have quite a number of budget hearings in which we're going to have presentations from every department head and from all the individuals helping to put the budget on. We've got Ade Irula, our finance director, and I do want to note that I'm going to give some brief overview, and then obviously it's my responsibility, according to statute, to propose a budget, and then it'll be up to the council to take that budget, run with it. I do want to say before I get started that I appreciate all of the hard work done by the members of the finance committee, the FEDRAC committee, chaired by Chair Duclos, who has been thinking about revenue, meeting about revenue options, excuse me, and talking about different things that we can do, because we have structural imbalances. And I've got some prepared remarks, but I do want to say that there's been a lot of work that's been going on for the past several years on this very issue. I also want to thank Councilmember Tran for an idea that he had in regard to really approaching this from a zero-based budget approach, making no assumptions. And that has really, I informed our council, that, excuse me, our staff and Ade, that we were going to be approaching this entire exercise with really not making any assumptions. Now, we were told, and I'll get into it. Actually, I'll go with my prepared remarks. But this is the budget book. This is the proposed budget that I have put forward with the assistance and great, tremendous work by our finance director, Ade Irula, as well as the work of the department directors and all of the people in their departments. So it's really an opening salvo, if you will. And I have a few prepared remarks, and it has this budget document, which is fairly lengthy. It's like a telephone book. Goes through over $100 million of our city budget. So let me get started here. I'd like to present my 2019 and 20 biennium budget. I'm proud of what we've been able to do with our downtown to this point as part of my first administration, the first 4 years. We're breathing new life into our downtown, transforming it for future generations, and laying the groundwork for what will be an economic engine and a destination location when the Sound Transit Light Rail project is completed just about 6 years from now. But in my second term, I'm shifting my focus to revenue sustainability and aligning our budget priorities and to correct a structural imbalance that has been in place long before I was elected. We've been living within our means, and my proposed fiscally responsible budget adheres to this mantra. Earlier this year, Ade had said that we would need to dip into the general fund reserves to the tune of $1 million per year in 19 and 20 for a total of $2 million. My response when I heard that and when I talked to him was, we won't do that. This budget has our general fund balance, my proposed budget, keeps our general fund balance remaining at a steady $9 million. Our budget is once again structurally balanced. And what I mean by structurally balanced, let me just take a moment, is that it doesn't rely on what that's referred to as one-time funding. That means where there is an expenditure, there is a concurrent and ongoing revenue stream. That is what it means to be structurally balanced. And to do it any other way, as I was on the council for 10 years before, you get yourself out there on a limb, and it's really not where you want to be, considering the fact that we're a service delivery organization. We also, it's very important that we keep that balance in the fund balance at $9 million, or roughly 17% of our budget. Our financing and our bond rating is linked to that, and that's very, very critical. In fact, to balance the budget earlier this year, we borrowed $300,000 from that amount, and this budget will repay that fund balance at $100,000 a year to make that whole. So I think that is a very important point about this. Public safety is a big piece of my proposed budget. We're doing great things here in Federal Way, and crime is down in Federal Way almost across every reported category, and this is what I want everybody to hear very carefully. In the city of Federal Way, through the end of June, crime is down 17% over the first 6 months in this year. We anticipate having the lowest overall crime rate in 5 years if those numbers stay firm. And that comes on the heels of a 10% drop in the previous year. During my time as mayor, overall crime is down 4 out of the last 5 years. Since taking office, we've increased our police positions by 10, making public safety a priority for our community. This year, we authorized the hire of 5 new police officers. Thank you in part to the council who authorized accepting the funding from the Department of Justice COPS grant, boosting our total number of officers to 134. I want to say something. The Department of Justice, I think, only granted 3 of those in Western Washington or in the entire state of Washington. Chief, wasn't it a very limited number of COPS grants?
That's correct, Mayor. Very few. I thought it was 2, but it could be 3.
And so I'm proposing this budget. I'm also proposing in this budget funds for car replacements in the department to make sure that we are keeping up with those capital needs. Now, with Spectra taking over management in August of the Performing Arts and Event Center, it is poised to really blossom and start bringing in a wide variety of events and performances to Federal Way. It will also lay the groundwork for shrinking the general fund subsidy the PAC uses. My proposed budget promises that we will not lay any city employees off. And you likely notice every day when you are driving around town the impact of our fabulous Public Works Department has on the roads and infrastructure. We completed $1.5 million of overlay projects in both 2017 and 18, and that will continue in this biennium for $3 million for the biennium. Directors, and this is where we started here when we were looking at the budget, directors of the big 4, I call them the big 4 departments, the Parks Department, the Police Department, the Public Works Department, and Community Development Department dug deep and found more than $200,000 in each of their departments in savings and efficiencies for a total of approximately $1 million toward the 19 budget. That is a direct result of the inspiration given to me by Councilmember Tran and every member of this council to really not make any assumptions about moving forward. We also identified, as I've said previously, $500,000 in savings for our SCORE jail cost, and a $100,000 savings coming from no longer having a management contract at the Knutson Family Theater with Center Stage. That will literally save the taxpayers $100,000. That was $600,000 that went directly to the 2019 budget. These savings will open the door for us to take care of our employees. The savings in our 2019 budget that I previously mentioned will allow for a 2% cost of living adjustment for non-represented city employees. This is something that we've talked about this when we bridged that gap earlier this year, the $854,000, but we are losing seasoned employees to other cities, to other governments, because of our pay disparity. And that is a huge loss of human capital and institutional knowledge, and that we simply cannot afford to keep losing that ground. And that's something that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. Well, I would also, I separate non-represented employees from represented employees because we're required, especially with bargaining units that are represented by unions, to negotiate every year, and they have kept track. It's the non-represented employees that have really, where the gears are slipping, and we're losing good people as a result of this. We freed up, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I found $312,000 in this without raising any taxes, and making sure that we bridged some of these gaps to have a proposed increase of 2%. And I believe that's the least we can do for our employees. Other highlights of this budget include funding for 2019 for the University Initiative to bring we're so excited to bring a higher education presence into our downtown. We're excited about this partnership with the Federal Way Public Schools, Highline College, and the University of Washington, and those efforts are progressing. I'd like to thank our Economic Development Director, Tim Johnson, and Yarden and our entire team, and the leadership of those institutions that are our partners. We're literally looking for space right now to be able to start classes in the winter semester starting at the beginning of next year. And on the heels of the release of our Quiet and Healthy Skies Task Force report, I proposed allocating some funding to pay for a study in both 2019 and 2020. And Yarden will talk about that. It's $35,000 in both years. That's for the study. But there's another piece of this that Yarden is going to get into. I'm also allocating funding for the Sustainable Airport Master Plan review in both years as well. We will continue to provide support for the Human Services piece to our budget. In 2018, we committed about $165,000 in general funds and pass-through funds for homeless prevention efforts, transitional housing, and emergency shelters. And we value our pivotal partners in the community. I'm allocating funds for the Chamber of Commerce to be a pivotal partner, as well as the Federal Way Historical Society at traditional levels. Although the Sound Transit Project is quite a ways away, about 6 or 7 years ago from now, and a few years from breaking ground here in Federal Way, we at the city have a dedicated employee in our Public Works Department, Tony Doucette, who is the liaison with the project. Also, as co-chair of the Tacoma Dome Link Extension Project, I have a seat at the table in protecting Federal Way's interest and businesses and jobs in an expansive project like this one. We literally have been sitting in rooms in the Fabulaccia, or the World Trade Center in Fife, where they have this lengthy maps of the area from our downtown all the way to Tacoma, and we are making sure that the lines that are being proposed and the eventual lines will have the least impact on our business community and our city as possible. So my role in that will obviously help with the city. My proposed budget acknowledges that there is a tax fatigue in our region. We hear it loud and clear. That is exactly why this budget features no tax increases. We will also maintain the same level of services for our customers, the residents of Federal Way. Now, in all candor, there are some fees that in regard to certain departments where work is being done that need to be adjusted, but no taxes on the general population. Turning our attention to 2020, I was talking about the first piece of the biennial budget. Now turning our attention to 2020, we will truly see the positive financial impact of my proposal, and you'll hear about this later today, about leaving the SCORE, the South County Correctional Facility, which I recommended to the council based on the recommendation of our police chief, Andy Wong. Our initial projections predict by leaving that entity, that we will save $2.1 million for the city of Federal Way. Even factoring in the debt service to the facility, we stand to save $2.1 million per year, $4.2 million in the biennium. This is really about making a business decision for our community. It's not something that we propose lightly. Our SCORE budget, the budget for the jail services, has skyrocketed since joining 7 years ago, increasing $3.9 million per year. That is an increase of 173%. That is not sustainable. That is outrageous. And my proposal to the council is for action tonight to give SCORE notice. I'll say that again, a 173% increase. I'm confident we'll be able to find a more competitive market rate versus the $260 per day we are currently being charged from SCORE, per day, per prisoner. Ladies and gentlemen, you could book people into the Courtyard Marriott downtown in a suite per night for how much? For a lot less than how much we're paying per night to put people in the SCORE regional facility. Now, we love the people over at the Courtyard Marriott, but we're not going to send them that kind of business, and it's just not. It's not sustainable.
Mayor, can I
yes,
ask
please.
a question about SCORE?
Yeah.
And I support what we're doing because it was supposed to save us money, and it's cost us nothing but money. Is there any legal ramifications of our pulling out?
You know, it's good you mentioned that.
Thank you.
I have been.
Thank you. You're the attorney.
And we not only that, I've been working with Ryan, our city attorney, our deputy city attorney. We actually hired outside counsel to take another look at it, and to make sure that that there was nothing that would prevent us from doing so. I do want to say in regard to leaving SCORE, we have to give thank you, Councilmember Duclos, we have to give a year's notice, which means by the end of this year, to be able to start those savings in 2020, we have to be able to give notice this year, and in January 1st of 2020, that 2.1 savings will start to accrue. And I have personally called every mayor or city manager of every one of our partner cities at SCORE, of which I'm the vice chair. And I was the vice chair for the previous 2 years. And so it's not easy. There's some based on relationships, but this is $4.2 million a year in this biennium. So we will also conduct a comprehensive salary survey and workload study for our workers. We have been losing ground and over the past few years, and what we really need to do, we have not conducted a comprehensive salary survey in quite a number of years. It's important. Just this year, just this week, I received notice that the number two person in the IT department has given notice to go to a nearby city. We have been losing people at an unfortunate rate based primarily on compensation and workload. And so this is not, I want to make sure, this is not just about making sure that city workers get paid more. We are very much under market, and it's going to start affecting the services, and we're going to take care of it. So the money that we receive from this, from the SCORE jail servings will go to a comprehensive salary, some of it, a small percentage of it, will go to a comprehensive salary survey, workload study. We've got some people doing the work of 2 or 3 people. And we need to take care of our people. The last salary survey was done more than 5 years ago. We are in the business of providing services. We have built up a staff of highly qualified individuals who are very good at their jobs. They have a wide breadth of institutional knowledge, but we continue to lose ground to people to other cities. We are losing that intellectual capital because they are finding a more competitive salary package elsewhere. Since downsizing in certain departments several years ago during the economic downturn, some of our employees' scope of work has changed. They have been asked to do more with less. They need to be more properly compensated. We will also be continuing to explore new avenues of sustainable revenue, just like we set up the city's top goals back in February at the council retreat. So, to review, our police department will be fully funded with 134 officers. We will continue to deliver the same level of service to residents. Spectra will continue to manage the PAC and work toward continuing to uphold and build on its great reputation in the region. I've allocated funds for the Chamber of Commerce as well as the Federal Way Historical Society. There is funding to pay for a study in both 2019 and 20 on airport issues, airport noise in our community, and I've also allocated or proposed allocating funds for the University Initiative. To recap, again, savings that I've identified will open the door for us to take advantage of our employees. The savings in our 2019 budget that I previously mentioned will allow for a 2% cost of living adjustment for non-represented employees, and where I first started off was not dipping into strategic reserves and no layoffs. Also, lastly, as chair of the Tacoma Dome Leak Extension Project, I have a seat at the table in protecting Federal Way's interest in an expansive project like this one, and that's why we have Tony Doucette, our liaison with the project. So, Council, those are some overall highlights. Again, there's a book on this. You're going to be presented with a detailed presentations from each of the department heads. We will have those hearings. A list of those hearings and essentially the budget calendar is on our website if you'd like to take a look at it. I guess at this time, Councilor, are there any questions? This is, again, just the start of the budget process, and then we'll end this process, I believe, in the first meeting of December. Councilmember Moore, then Councilmember, let's go, Councilmember Duclos.
Just a comment. I like what I'm hearing, and I'm really glad that we're looking at SCORE, because that's been a real drain on the budget, and I think the plans to leave it are the right ones.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. This is, I believe, my third time under hearing your budget announcement, and I've appreciated all those moments. I look forward to reviewing this document very thoroughly and having discussions with my colleagues. As I just wanted to take the time to remind that I do expect to see the mayor's office engaging with the public with this budget, and I'm deeply concerned that I'm not going to hear that. I know that the city, I know that we're going to have budget hearings here, during council special meetings, but it is my desire, and I think it is a desire of some of the community members, to see the mayor out in the community talking about what does this budget mean to them. And so, is that something I'm going to be seeing, or
tomorrow? Councilmember Moore, I could. I don't know if you're going to come to the Chamber of Commerce tomorrow, but I'm going to, probably in greater detail, if that's possible, go through this proposed budget and make a presentation to the business community. But it is in our plan to have essentially a budget town hall meeting out in the general public. I've heard you.
And I appreciate that a lot. That's really important to me. Tomorrow's meeting, in my mind, doesn't count because I know that it is a paid event. And to the public, the general public.
I get paid to be there?
Well, in order to go to the Chamber of Commerce, one has to pay to get in there.
I'm kidding.
And so I'm glad to hear you say that you'll be taking this out. And I look forward to seeing you in action and hearing our constituents' questions or concerns or thoughts with their budget, because I think that's one way how you're going to get a yes vote from me in November. I think it's really important because I think, Mr. Mayor, there's really a lack of knowledge when it comes to how does our budget work, and what happens. And that's why one of the things I'm hoping to see, and I'm going to have conversations with your finance director and your proposal, is that we get a hold of 21st century technologies and we start utilizing a dashboard, interactive dashboard, because I think truly that helps people understand their budget. When you can feel, touch, and move, I think there's a better knowledge and understanding of what is the government doing with my own dollars, and how are they spending it, and who's writing those checks out and whatnot. But I am going to be looking carefully at your economic development department and many other departments in here, but I'm eager to roll up my sleeves and start dissecting this and working with my colleagues to make sure that we pass a good budget for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Duclos?
I'm glad you're presenting at the chamber tomorrow, because that's the business people. And they know budgets, and they know what's going on in the city. And if we can get input from them, I think that's great. As a matter of fact, I'm working with them to come to the next Revenue Enhancement Committee meeting also, and they're reviewing the stuff that we've come up with the first time. So I think we need a closer working relationship with the chamber. I really do. They're the business people.
Right.
And they're the businesses are the backbone of this city.
Right. Agreed. And that's why we're pivotal partners, and that's why I included it in my budget, or my proposed budget to the council. I agree with that completely. It's actually, I think it has worked out just perfectly that this is where I get to unveil it. And while I was being a little tongue-in-cheek there, Councilmember Moore, we have a sacred responsibility, absolutely, to communicate to the people that we work for and whose dollars that we invest in services. And so while I was kidding a moment ago, it should not undercut one bit our commitment to make sure that we're transparent and that we're going to get out there with the public and really do everything we can to let people know about what we're doing. And about, we heard it very loud and clear when we were going through the issue, or with the issue about bridging the gap, and about earlier this year with other issues. We heard it loud and clear about people concerned about increased taxes and the strain on people's budgets with fixed incomes. And so I agree with that. It is in my works. It just happens that we happen to have the Chamber of Commerce tomorrow, but that's not the end of the story. Neither is this. So thank you very much. Councilmember Stefa Dawson.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You turn it off. Okay. Please.
Go ahead. Okay. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that presentation. And I'm going to read this Bible someday. No, but so I appreciate that there's continued funding for human services. One thing I'd like to see happen with human services overall is I think we usually fund traditionally funded agencies and programs, and I think maybe the next round we might want to look at other non-traditional ways and or programs that are grassroots that do not get funding otherwise because of the historical expectation or requirements that we put on our application process. I would appreciate and like to see us do something different, or at least include or add. way so that others could also be competitive in that process. You did not talk about adding new staff, but I personally really believe that there's a need for Tim Johnson to get additional help. There's a lot of work that I know he does. I don't know if he's here, but
He's in the back. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. I think he does work a lot, and if at all possible, and I think in order to accomplish what we want to do for our city, I believe it's very important and crucial that we focus on economic development for our city and see where that goes. And then you talked about sound transit, and I could be wrong, but I'm not convinced that they'll finish our project by 2024. And one of my reasons is I know how far, I just saw it today. The Bellevue route is very well, you know, I mean, you see it, you see the trails. So same with Northgate, which are all Sound Transit 3. Ours is not even started yet. And so I don't know what the conversation is there, but I'm really concerned about that, and just want them to know that we're very serious about this, and that we do also want to see it happening, or at least see some level of progress, because we're stuck at 200th, and it's been how many years? And I don't know what they're doing. I mean, they've presented to us, but if they're studying, I don't see what more study needs to be done, when I clearly see that there's progress happening, clear progress happening in the other locations, and it's all Sound Transit 3. So those would be my concerns, but thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And just to answer some of those questions before I turn it over to the Deputy Mayor for her questions or comments, is Sound Transit is in the property acquisition phase right now to get down to our downtown. And so that's really what they're working on right now. And thank you, thanks to Pete von Reichbauer and former Senator Tracy Ide, who got a lot of that study done and environmental review and some of that to get all the way to the downtown. That's actually going to save us a lot of time at this stage. The route is essentially completed, and that is all done. So I think they are gearing up, and certainly I'm not a representative of Sound Transit, but it does help, I think, actually being on that group of elected leaders for ST2, where we were able to come up with that alignment to our downtown, I think was very important, and because there were other possible alignment possibilities. I would also say that we're on the verge of not just getting this $2.2 million or $2.1 million per year as a result of SCORE, but once we get that in 2020, that's really where we're going to be able to, once we do the salary survey and the workload study, it is anticipated that once we finish those two, we'll be able to fill out our departments. We'll have the revenue to do it at that point, and to fill out the departments in greater detail. And that's a key part of this. But we have to be very careful that we don't hire people in right now if we don't have the resources quite yet. So if the council approves us moving away from SCORE, then we're going to have that $2.2 million. This is not counting the money we should get from the water and excise tax once that litigation is received, and that'll be close to $1 million a year, again, to help out with these issues, which in my opinion are absolutely vital for the long-term sustainability of this city government. So what we want to do is, I think, to answer your question, my planning is to add employees to fill those in, because you can't have in the long term people doing 2 or 3 people's jobs. They'll just leave. They'll just get exhausted and leave eventually, and underpay them at the same time. It's not right. So thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you, and thank you for your report. I want to encourage the council to not lose sight that we still need to find other sources of revenue. We need to think not just 2 years out, but we need to think at least 10 years out for the growth of the city. Also, the luncheon tomorrow, Councilmember Moore, has been opened up to non-members of the chamber. You do have to pay, and the cost of the lunch has been reduced also to let more citizens come in and listen to the mayor speak.
but you still have to pay to get in.
Yes, but it's been opened up to the community, and where most lunches are members only. And I have a question on how you guys want to receive questions. Do you want us to save up our questions, or do you want us to just throw them out as we're reading your budget and send them to you in both a day, or how would you like that to happen?
Wow. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for the sensitivity. Well, let me think about that for a second.
Okay.
So I think, email, I think it's, sometimes the questions actually really are good for the public to hear. And to the extent that you ask a question and want to make sure that the question and answer is played out in public, I would let us know. I think actually if you give us a series, like we got a couple emails from you today that really went to the heart of a couple of key issues in certain departments. I think the question and answer, I think, is helpful to the public. And so, probably email to generate the question, and then that way we can research it. And then, maybe a request that when we get to that we highlight that. And that this question came in, and this was the answer. And the better that dialogue. And maybe even, your questions will help serve to help us adjust our presentations. Yeah, thank you. Council, were there any other questions? Oh, Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to thank you again for providing this for us today early, like you said you would. So I really thank you for that, because I know it's a lot of work. It's a huge document, and so I want to thank you and your staff for that. I did want to second Councilmember Asefa Dawson in terms of the Economic Development Department and Tim Johnson. When we think about the council's goals and thinking through that lens of economic development, revenue streams, I think it's really important that we try to think creatively and how we can help broaden that department. So I will plan on working with my colleagues in that department. Also, I did want to ask in terms of the Human Services and the Homelessness Task Force, if we will have a report on that prior to the final vote.
Yeah. Councilmember Johnson, I have actually put more thought into this than you would probably realize, because I understand the questions have been raised about this issue. And so as I was making this presentation, one of the things I wanted to make sure is that I wanted to make sure the public knew and that we're already putting in certain funds, and there's federal funding that passes through the city. Then there's the $165,000 or $185,000 that goes through the general fund. But I do think that there should be some flexibility for certain things that come in. It's difficult right now to anticipate what that is, but I think actually kind of just putting almost a bookmark down and just saying, hey, we've got that out there. And I was actually just talking to both Yarden and the chair of the Homeless Committee, Sherry, today about that issue and about making sure that before we finalize this budget, if there's anything out there that has budget implications, that we need to be working on it. But that actually prompted, because of this discussions that you've been having and the questions you've been raising about that issue, has really generated our discussions early with regard to our legislative agenda. So we've actually already activated our city lobbyist, Aaron Flygear, to start working on areas and trying to anticipate areas on perhaps issues of homelessness or other issues like that, where we can really get in early. I think the earlier you start on legislative asks, as our former state representative, Linda Kochmar, and our former mayor and our former colleague up here I can attest, the earlier you start that, the better. And so that actually has generated that. So I think that's something to kind of keep our eye on and bookmark. Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank you, Mayor, and all the directors and staff for putting this initial budget book together. I know this is a lot of work. I also want to thank the Mayor for your willingness to try something different this budget cycle. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable for us to try something new, but your willingness is really appreciated.
Thank you.
I will, of course, study this book, and Most likely, I will take it apart and then put things together. So I want to apologize in advance that you probably will receive a lot of questions from me. So, so be prepared.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you.
what the next 2 months are for.
Yeah, we're policy partners. I mean, we actually, a lot of people, since the change in government, the executive and the mayor's office is one branch of government. The legislative and the city council is another branch of government. And, we expect this, and we're policy partners. So this is the beginning of the conversation, and I fully understand that. So thank you. But, we work collaboratively together. And I think sometimes it's a little confusing because we're all up here in the dais at the same time, but we have those different functions. And I really look forward to having you. I had one take on some takes on this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some different ideas and where I tried something here, I think sometimes the most important thing is not to get caught up in pride of authorship, but just to get sincerely caught up in pride of product for all the people of the community, and especially the people that need assistance. Okay. Any other, Councilmember Kopech?
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to thank you for the presentation, and I think for the sincere effort on your part to shake every tree to see what we can find in the way of savings. And I think that the thought process that's gone into SCORE and just looking at different ways to save money it's going to serve us well going into what's going to be a very tough budget cycle for us. I think that when I started this budget process, I sat down with the directors and really kind of wanted to understand where their priorities were, just from a first-hand perspective. And I think the challenge that I see right now is, and you've addressed it, I think, with the 2% COLA. That I think that I don't know that is going to be enough to stem the tide, and that's the concern I have at this point. Is that we've got employees that are dedicated, that have gone out of their way to do more with less for a number of years, and I think that we need to really be able to have a very clear path toward them getting compensated at a level that more closely approaches that of the cities that we are competing with for their services. I think the fact that we've lost a few more people to cities, it's disheartening from the standpoint that the experience and the value that they brought and the dedication that they demonstrated is going to another city is going to benefit from that, from their efforts now going forward. So again, I think as I look at this budget and I see the preservation of funding for the overlay project, as I see us looking at continue to support studies, airport noise study, the university initiative. I think those are good things that help us to move forward and address the quality of life issues that we're facing. But again, I think that as a member of the council, I think the expense of losing valued employees is much more than the salaries that it would cost, the salary differential that cost represents. So anyway, I hope that in this process we can really continue to look at ways to address that issue and see if we can retain some people for the long term. So.
Thank you, Mark. And it really was, sometimes it was a little, putting this together, you guys, sometimes felt like digging sand at the beach. Every time I would, I would find money somewhere, something else kind of came up. One of the things that's a little bit of a wild card for us, for you as you make this decision, is we're now in negotiations with the Federal Way Police Guild. And so I've been trying to ballpark what that number is going to be, and I've got a particular range. I don't want to get into it right now, but it's going to be very difficult to try to thread that needle, if it were, and then come to closure on what that exact number is. I want to identify this issue for you because I think it's a variable in this process, and so we'll need to do right by the Guild, and I think that we have historically. And then I think it's a matter of, one of the things I want to do is I want to protect that at a minimum, that 312. There were several times when I was going through, when Aday and I were going through this process and the department directors were going through this process, that sometimes that 312 would sort of, get smaller and smaller, and I kept coming back to, we at least have to have a 2% COLA. I think it is important to note where we lost a lot of ground in our community and with our salaries was where our city employees went for about 6 years without a cost of living adjustment. Now, I think we're, being a part of those prior budgets, because I was on the council 10 years before, we had to go through layoffs at some point. We wanted to protect jobs. And so, but I think what happens is when you go that long without addressing salary adjustments, you do end up having these adjustment periods. And so I think we're going to have more resources. Clearly, I think if the council approves giving notice to SCORE, we'll have those resources in 2020. The question is, is more than that 2% figure warranted? And if so, where does that money come from? And that's really where we'll have to roll up our sleeves and take out some pencils and erasers. Councilmember Duclos?
Well, that's why we have the resource committee looking at potential revenue sources.
Right.
And if we have a couple of more meetings, we'll be able to come back, because I'm reaching out to the chamber people to look at and give us ideas too, and then we'll be able to come back, because that's where our problem is. Our revenue stream is not big enough.
That's right. That's right.
For what we need and for what we have for this population in the city and the size of our city. So that's what we really have to be looking is how do we generate more revenue without taxes?
Right. That's right. Okay. Ade, I just want to say, Ade, can you approach your podium, and do you have anything to add or anything to say to the council?
Just for the benefit of the public, the budget is available online now. I think if the citizens go onto the city's website, just right in front, they can click on the 2019 budget. And right here at the top is the proposed budget, and here is the budget meeting so that people can follow when the next meeting and all of that. So the agenda is right there. I think hopefully that will be helpful for the citizens to follow. And one more thing I wanna add. I think thanks to the mayor and also Councilmember Duclos, this budget is not due until October. That is what the law requires. And I think it was the push of the mayor and Councilmember Duclos to say, well, in order to have more time for you to be able to review it, that's how we are doing it this first week in September. So even though I think that burnt a lot of time on the part of the directors and their staff, I think, hopefully, that counts for something.
Okay. Thank you, Ade, for all your hard work. Ade was frequently, I've been getting phone calls at very late hours or on the weekend from Ade, who was really, a lot of work went into this. And while I get to present it, and I came up with some of the big ideas, Ade did most of the big ideas and most of the heavy lifting. So thank you, Ade, for your hard work. We appreciate it. And a big thank you to the big four departments. Actually, I've got four in the room right now. And when I say big four, I want to clarify one thing. We've got some departments like finance or like the city clerk's office or law, and we weren't going to get big ticket items or big savings out of those departments. They're already running low on personnel, and that's not where the margin, or at least where we could really freeze positions. I think when we get into the budget hearings, you guys, what I think would be instructive, and what I'll ask them to do is, I'll have them explain during the budget presentations, how did they come up with these $250,000? And with a keep in mind that if we bring them back, it gets that 312,000 or the COLA or whatever it is smaller and smaller. So, but I think it is. There are certain departments where there was an empty position, we froze a position. And if there were, certain things that we could hold off on, we did. We actually struggled for a little bit about whether we were going to close the community center, at certain times, and there's certain things that we did, but we did freeze a few positions here and there, and we held off. This budget does not include the flower baskets, and and it doesn't include certain things that some people are fairly used to, and that's why we need to make sure that we're going to go through each and every one of those. There's a lot of detail to go into this budget, but I want to thank the big four: the police, Public Works, Community Development, and Parks. That's Chief Wong, our newly minted Public Works Director, with the assistance of the E.J. Walsh. E.J., this is his first meeting as Public Works Director. Brian Davis and John Hutton, who really, nothing, they care. Yeah, let's give them a big round of applause. Because you can imagine, these are their lives, this is their professional lives, and they care about the people they work with, they care about the programs that they're doing for the people, and so it really hurts to find that nearly $1 million that we found. So, but that's what it takes, and we certainly wanted to make sure that no one lost their job over this, and that we did not raise taxes, or in the reverse order, actually. Okay, so not hearing any further questions, let's go ahead and move on to the next item. Is that okay, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your input. Okay, item B, resolution authorizing the mayor to give notice to the SCORE interlocal member cities of the city's intent to withdraw from the interlocal agreement. First, I'll have a staff report from Chief Wong, and then we'll go from there. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, members of the council. This evening, we have a very important decision to make about the future of jail services in Federal Way. I'm going to share some information with you that I believe will be helpful, assisting you in making this important policy decision as to whether we withdraw from the SCORE interlocal agreement. Overview of the presentation. First, I want to share with you the thought process that went into building and forming this regional jail SCORE with other South King County jurisdictions. Secondly, we will look at the jail costs for the past 7 years, the incremental increases to where we are today in 2018. Next, we'll look at the M&O calculation, the maintenance and operation for our owner cities, how owner cities calculated, how it's become so challenging for us and other owner cities. And lastly, we'll look at the alternative jail housing and cost considerations and what our options are moving forward. So to take advantage of economies of scale and the benefit of pooling resources, the member cities, the owner cities of Auburn, Burien, Des Moines, Federal Way, Renton, SeaTac, and Tukwila, 7 jurisdictions, agreed to partner and jointly construct and maintain and operate a consolidated correctional facility. This particular jail facility is located in Des Moines. In 2009, the owner cities executed the SCORE interlocal agreement, with Federal Way's share of the capital contribution and debt service being 17%. Our annual debt service is $935,000 annually. The SCORE became operational September 2011, and full year of service was in 2012. Federal Way's share of the cost of the maintenance, M&O, is determined by the Federal Way's average daily population for the 12-month period of the preceding year in comparison to other jurisdictions. So total aggregate ADP of the owner 7 cities, and our ADP will determine the our percentage share for the upcoming year. The goal was to provide this correctional service at a lower total cost to the participating owner cities. In the case of Federal Way, there's been a significant jail cost increase in each of the 7 years the SCORE has been in operation, creating a financial burden that's just not, it's unsustainable. In 2012, Federal Way's total jail budget was $2.3 million, a 17% M&O for a 60 ADP, that's 60 inmates. In 2018, SCORE jail budget swelled to nearly $6.3 million. Our pro rata share for operating the jail now is 30%, just over 30%, with an 80 ADP. The steady incremental increase for the past 7 years, with 20 more ADP, has increased our budget by nearly $4 million, reflecting an increase of 173% since the inception of our participation. This chart shows our total jail budget. In 2012, we were at $2.3 million. 2013, our jail budget swelled $1.5 million to $3.8 million. In 2014, it went up to $4.1 million, an increase of about $300,000. In 2015, it went up to $4.4 million, another $300,000 or so. In 2016, it went up to $5.4 million, an increase of $1 million. In 2017, our jail budget went up to $5.7 million, another $300,000. And in 2018, it went up to $6.4 million, about $700,000 increase. We will see a reduction of $473,000 in 2019. And prior to 2012, our 5-year period that we were contracting jail services, our budget ranged from $1.6 million to $2.5 million. That was our range prior to that. The M&O calculation. During conception, the owner cities envisioned a correctional facility following the Valley-Com model. However, there are some significant fundamental differences. We're one of the 5 owner cities for Valley-Com. It's a successful model, provides exceptional service for us, and that's why they try to follow the Valley-Com model for owner participation. In the Valley-Com model, owner cities cannot significantly shift the financial burden to other owner cities. Calls for service determine the Valley-Com's M&O for each member city. No owner agency can materially alter their total calls for service from year to year. For example, we're a city of almost 100,000. Our calls for service is about 75,000. So from year to year, you might reduce calls for service by a couple thousand either way, or increase by a couple. So aggregate, when you look at the 5 owner cities, you can't really materially alter your total calls for citizens when citizens call 911 for assistance. So there's no way you can really impact the other jurisdictions significantly financially, whereas in SCORE it's quite different. In SCORE, owner agencies and agencies can significantly shift the percentage of total their own financial responsibility by decreasing their ADP. Even small numbers can significantly shift the percentage of the total cost. Unlike Valley-Com model, the owner cities pay a higher ADP maintenance fee than those jurisdictions that contract with SCORE. Whereas SCORE, we actually get a reduced price for being an older owner city, and we charge more for the contract agencies. In SCORE, it's opposite. So this chart, I wanted to kind of point out a couple things here. We'll look at Auburn. When we started talking about building a jail, they were at 100 ADP, and they would have been at 29% of the M&O for operating the jail. In 2012, they were at 122 ADP, and they were at nearly 34% of the M&O operation of the jail. Following that year, they went down to 84, 69, 69, 62, and they dropped their ADP in 2017 to 51. Now their prorated share of their M&O was just over 19% compared to 34%.
I think it's important to note that Auburn eliminated its municipal court and contracted with King County. And that is really where the wheels came off. But anyway, go ahead.
Sure. And then we'll look at Renton here. Another large agency had a high ADP of 117. In 2000, and they had 34% M&O. They dropped to 91 in 2012, 81, 78, 80, 78, 76. They were now just above 28%. And then you look at Federal Way. We were at 60 ADP, 17% of the M&O. We went up to 90 ADP, 83, 81, 91, 90, 80. So by 20 different ADP, our pro rata share of the total operation of the score now is at just over 30%. So by these two jurisdictions these two jurisdictions reducing their ADP shifted significant amount of the ADP or the operational cost to Federal Way.
Could you, I forget, do you talk about the race to the bottom?
I think that's kind of what I'm explaining here, but I'll certainly talk a little bit more.
Okay.
Yes, by having lower ADP, I was explaining that you can significantly shift that cost, whereas Valley Come that you couldn't do it. So there's a flaw in the cost formula as to how things are done at SCORE. The current practice...
Councilmember Kopeng has a quick question.
Yes.
Chief, just a quick question. Do we have any access to statistics on what the actual incarceration rates are for Renton and Auburn? Just to, I mean, it doesn't seem right that they would be arresting fewer people. So they're housing their prisoners elsewhere, is what I would assume.
No, they're not housing people elsewhere. We're all housing our inmates at SCORE facility.
So what you're saying is that Auburn and Renton have less prisoners per day?
That is correct.
Well, no, but I want to make sure I'm clear on this, and I apologize. Maybe I'm totally missing this, but we've been sending our prisoners exclusively to SCORE.
That's correct.
Have Renton and Auburn been sending their prisoners exclusively to SCORE? Or
Yes, sir. They have.
All of their prisoners are going exclusively to SCORE?
My understanding is every owner city is sending their inmates to SCORE. And we did raise the same question, because are they lowering their ADP by sending inmates to other facilities? And the answer is no.
Okay.
Everybody's sending them to SCORE.
So in the case of Auburn, where they have the municipal court, contracting with King County Municipal Court, is King County sending the prisoners elsewhere, or are they sending them to SCORE?
If it's City of Auburn, they're sending them to SCORE.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Honda had a question.
Thank you. Excuse me. So the mayor reported earlier this evening that our crime rate is down significantly in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Like 27% in the last 2 years.
Yeah, 10% reduction in 2017, and for the first 6 months of 2018, our crime rate, overall crime rate, is down 17% in comparison to year 2017.
So is that 27% in 2 years? Is that what it works out to?
I don't know if you can calculate exactly like that, but the total crime, 10% down, and from that total number, it's down another 17%.
So does committing a crime equate to possibly going to SCORE?
Not always, but yes. If they are sent to be incarcerated, the court would send them, yes, and they would end up in SCORE for Federal Way. Unless it's a felony. If it's a felony, then they go to King County Jail.
Or King County Juvenile.
Or juvenile facility.
So is it possible then Auburn and Renton have also had a major reduction in crime if they have less inmates at SCORE?
I don't think you can equate it exactly to crime, because I think sometimes you manage your inmate population. Sometimes you might be more robust with your electronic home monitoring. You might do more probation. You may do work release. You may do other things to keep someone out of jail. So that's one way of managing your ADP at a jail facility, is you do alternative to incarceration to do that. And I got to be frank with you that, yes, looking at these numbers, about a year and a half ago or so, we began actually looking at our ADP and how can we manage that, because cost is a factor. And we were now up at $6.4 million, and we had to do something in terms of trying to save funding from our budget.
So we also use those other sources, electronic devices and work release?
That's correct. I can't speak for each jurisdiction, but I know other jurisdictions do that as well. To what degree, I don't know, but yes, we are doing that.
More than we've done in the past?
I think so. Maybe more discussion. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go ahead, Chief.
Okay. So the current practice of allowing shifting of the financial burden to other member city needs to be changed, or at least mitigated, for the benefit of all the owner cities. If this practice continues and the large cities drive down their ADP, it will create an unsustainable financial burden, particularly for the smaller owner cities, and this disparity will be pronounced in 2020 budget process and beyond. And I am currently looking at the ADP numbers for other cities. We're seeing a reduction in 2019, but I anticipate that our budget, if nothing changes, will go up again in 2020. Based on the ADP numbers I'm looking at for other jurisdictions, I see another shift back to federal way for percentage increase. But we are seeing a reduction in 19, but anticipate that if we stay with SCORE, it will go back up again. We'll probably be in the 6-point-some million again. This is a complicated issue. No one option is going to likely meet the needs of all the owner cities. There's a significant shift of financial obligation to member cities depending on which method, the cost formula, is used to determine the cost of the M&O for SCORE facility. Alternate inmate housing options. So we have began looking at alternate inmate housing options to significantly reduce our annual expenditure over SCORE. So we've looked at several jails, and we calculated based on 70 ADP. So currently today, our ADP is in the range of 60 to 65. So we rounded up to 70 to give us a little cushion. So we have done some preliminary research with King County Jail, which we currently have a contract with now. We've had for a number of years. Kent City Jail, Nisqually Jail, Issaquah Jail, Yakima Jail. Some of the other jails we've used in the past are Okanagan, Chelan County Jail. We've used 5. So there have been other cities that we've looked at. And we will look at other cities as well. We just did the preliminary research, and we feel that we have facilities that are willing to contract with us, and operationally will be fine if we decide to leave. We will have places to book misdemeanor inmates.
Chief, can you give an example of how much per day does the Yakima jail, would they charge us?
Yes, sir, I will. I think that's going to be the next slide here. So here's one jail cost scenario. Obviously, the numbers can change, but we were, for budgeting purposes, we looked at 10 beds at King County Jail at $189 daily. That would be $689,000. We looked at 5 beds at Kent City Jail, $129 daily maintenance fee of $219,000. We looked at 10 beds at Nisqually Jail, $95 a day at $346,000. 10 beds at Issaquah Jail at $75 a day at $273,000. 35 beds at Yakima Jail, $58 a day, $740,000 annual expense. We anticipate our booking fee to be around $125,000. We certainly believe it's going to be less than that, but we round it up. And our projected annual jail cost is just shy of $2.4 million, but that's not all the cost. But that is just far as our jail contract fees will be about $2.4 million. Other expenditures, considerations, we would need
Chief,
yes, ma'am.
Deputy Mayor's question.
I have another question. So if Nisqually, Issaquah, and Yakima are under $100 a night, why wouldn't we try to put more prisoners there instead of King County or Kent at over $100 a night?
For just daily operation, we need a facility that's going to be close to the officers when they do make an arrest, and we have to book them in the jail. Let's say domestic violence, mandatory arrest. The officer has to transport that individual that's been arrested to a jail.
Right.
So we need a facility that's going to be very close to us in order for the operation of our system to work, operation of booking somebody into jail.
Okay.
So King County Jail traffic is really not very good. Now, during business hours, we can go to Kent Regional Center and book there into the King County Jail. But typically, we're going to end up going to downtown Seattle. So we're seeking a contract with Kent City Jail because it's just down the road. They have their own jail facility, and they have indicated that they're willing to contract with us. So we would book individuals into these 2 jail facilities. And far as once they're sentenced for long-term or a week or whatever, most likely we will increase our bed numbers at Yakima Jail, and they come here to take inmates. So we wouldn't have to transport them. But we would put more inmates in Yakima, Issaquah, and Nisqually to keep our costs down. But we need certain number of beds in King County and Kent Jail to make our operation efficient and
Okay.
work.
Just my next question, and your next slide is on the officers that we're going to need to hire to transport.
Yes.
One of the perks or amenities of SCORE is a video court.
Mhm.
If we have folks scattered all over the place, and will they need to be brought back here to Federal Way for court?
If they need, yes, they'll be brought to court, but people that need to come to court, we'll keep them at a facility that's close to us, and that's where our transport officers will bring them to court. However, if they've already been sentenced, let's say they're sentenced to 10 days in jail, we'll send them to a facility because they don't really need to come to court. But when their term is done, they'll bring them back to our city.
So our transport officers, the 3 that we will need to hire, will be responsible for bringing them back and forth to court?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So the other...
Councilmember Duclos?
Oh.
Yeah, I just, I was here when SCORE was first proposed, and it was supposed to save us money, because at that time, I think we were transporting most of our prisoners over to Yakima, and then going over and picking them up when they got released or when they finished their term. Are we, as part of the original SCORE ones, how much are we committed to on an annual basis?
None, right now, $935,000 per year
Okay.
for 20 years.
And so we can't get out of that. We have to
Cannot.
pay that.
No, we have an obligation. In fact, actually, at the last board meeting with SCORE, legal counsel looked at me, because I informed the board at the last public meeting, because they were talking about their next year's budget. And I was sitting there and saying that I'd talked to every one of them, but had never actually brought it up during a board
Right.
meeting. And I just, so I felt duty bound to say, you guys need to start working on your budget for 2020, because I told them about this meeting and my proposal. And, so legal counsel for SCORE at that point says, well, you understand you still have this obligation. And we said, of course we do. We understand.
We have the basic obligation to pay for the facility that was built.
That's right. Last year it was $910,000. This year it's $935,000. But we have an obligation for that bond. And but even after we pay that bond, we're still going to end up $2.1 million ahead of where we would be if we were still in the facility.
It was told to us that this would save us money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't work that way, and I think we've got to do something about it.
Now, the city of Federal Way has been used as a cash machine.
Yeah.
We really...
Can I get some of that?
I tell you, it's outrageous. I mean, we just take a look at all this amount of money. It's outrageous. SCORE's broken, and I've told that to I've told that to the board. I've told that to it's broken.
And I agree.
And part of actually what they did is they expanded their business. Sorry, Chief, I don't mean to steal your presentation, but they expanded their business and they got the Department of Corrections to house inmates in there. Well, there's a cap on how much you can charge the Department of Corrections, and that cap is $80 a day. So we as a member city are subsidizing all these other contract cities. And it's just broken. And I want to let everybody here know as well, and anybody else watching, we actually, the chief and I, in a day, went to an all-day retreat with SCORE back in March, and we presented a bunch of alternatives, or several alternatives. We gave it to the prior executive director. We printed it out. We brought it forth, and they summarily just shot us down.
Are any other cities having this issue?
Yeah, actually, as a result of this, Des Moines is, I actually had to stand firm and say we cannot change the formula this year because we need this $500,000 for our budget. And City of Des Moines' contract is going to go up 100%. And City of Burien is also very affected as well. And we have heard from other sources that Burien is now looking at other jails as well. So I think actually the wheels could come off. But it's certainly not our intention to harm SCORE, but we need to protect ourselves.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not doing what it was supposed to do.
Right, exactly. So we did everything we could to try to, we proposed some different models, and Chief rolled it out, one of the first things. And Auburn and Renton, who really were key in the establishment of this, and they're good people, great people, but they just basically said, no change. All right, Chief, go ahead.
Okay. So 3 FTEs, full-time equivalent jail transport officers. We're asking for 3 officers to move inmates around and security here and also in the courtroom. We're asking for 1 FTE for jail coordinator. We're asking for 1 new jail transport vehicle. We already have a vehicle, but we need a second vehicle. In the event the vehicle breaks or is in service, we need a backup vehicle. That's a one-time cost. We're asking a startup cost for transport vehicle needs and equipment of $15,000. So projected 2020 annual jail services budget. Average daily maintenance plus booking fees at 7080p, just under $2.4 million. Scored debt service of $935,000. Medical and mental health detention, $275,000. Medical, $150,000. Work release, electronic home monitoring probation, $100,000. 4 FTEs at $460,000. And then M&O for jail transport vehicle, $15,000. So total annual projected jail operations expenditure at $4.3 million. Current 2018 SCORE King County jail budget, our current jail budget is $6.4 million. This would be an annual savings over current SCORE jail services of just shy of $2.1 million annually. I do want to let you know that to ensure that we don't go over budget, we believe these numbers are higher than it needs to be, but we want to make sure we become under budget. Just to give you an idea, SCORE jail at $6.2 million, and our current budget is $6.4. There's a $122,000 that we budget extra for cases we need to book somebody into King County Jail that has a serious medical or a mental health issue that we need to put them into a special jail facility. So just to give you an idea, medical at SCORE jail, we're budgeted $60,000 in the existing SCORE budget. We've only spent $19,000 through July. So that gives you an idea. We're budgeting $150,000. This year we only spent $15,000. Now somebody goes to the ER and they're in our custody, it can really rack up the bill quickly. So just want to let you know that there's some extra cushion there. We should have additional savings, but we are going back to what we used to do. And so it's not completely foreign to us, but we are putting some extra money there just in case we run into difficulties first year.
Councilmember Tran?
Thank you. I do have a question on the FTEs. So right now, our ADP is about 80 per month, right?
60 to 65. Current
60 to 65.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that about 2-3 inmates per day.
We actually book 4.88 per day on average. I just looking at some numbers in 2018. So just shy of 5 people a day get booked. Some days none, some days more, but that's how many we book into jail. Okay. But there's people constantly being released as well.
So let's say 5 people per day. Why do we need 3 officers to transport 5 prisoners?
Oh, I'm sorry. Usually the officers who make the arrest will do the booking. It's just during the course of the day. You would need officers to move inmates, and then you got to count for vacation time, sick time, other response. So you might have to go different places to pick up inmates, and they got to be brought in a timely fashion. So accounting for all that, to be safe and to ensure that operationally we can meet the needs of the police department and the court, we're asking for 3 FTEs.
Thank you.
A good question, though. Why not 2 or why 3? But you have to calculate for 5-day coverage, and then we might need swing shift coverage as well, because we don't want officers then going up to King County Jail. Now they're tied up for 2.5 hours. We need them on the streets, and that's what these officers will do. Is they'll be the ones sitting at jail waiting to book somebody into jail, and it takes time to process someone into a jail facility.
Deputy Mayor Honda, and then Councilmember Asafa-Dawson.
Thank you. Do the jail transport officers have the same training as our regular officers?
The initial plan is we're going to use full-time commissioned officers, and I think because they know the operation of the police department, they have higher level of training. The thought is after 2-3 years, we would probably transition them to just being
transport officers. So it will not be higher pay and benefit than a police officer. But our thought process right now is, let's put people in there that know our courts, the streets, the process, and they have higher level of training. But after 2-3 years, I would anticipate changing the job classification to transport officers.
Then my next question is, do these 3 officers that we'll be hiring, are they counted in the 134 officers in your budget?
No, we would be adding 3 more. It would be up to 137.
Okay, thank you.
But we wouldn't incur those costs until 2020, correct?
There'll be some costs in December of 2019 because we got to move all the inmates out, but it'd be less, it'd be a month.
Right. We got to be up and staffed, ready to go.
We got to get everybody out by December 31st.
Right. So we don't get billed for another year of M&O with, you know.
That's correct, Mayor.
So there'll be a month in which, but 2020 is when it starts. Councilmember Cephedos.
Thank you. So this is projection for 2020. How long is the contract with all the different jails going to be?
They're just, usually they'll renew itself, and both jurisdictions have the option of getting out of a contract with written notice.
Okay.
So once we sign a contract, there's different ways of doing it. You can do guaranteed beds, and then after that, it's if they have space. So guaranteed beds are going to be generally a little bit more money, but we will kind of manage those numbers.
Okay, because right now it does look good because this is what we have. And just like SCORE didn't work, if this doesn't work, then what are our options? And then also the $15,000 for a transport vehicle, that is not going to be an ongoing, it's a one-time cost, right?
That's right. That's one-time cost there.
Okay. So, but that would be a question that I don't know, I mean, I know you can't project, but at the same time, this doesn't work, or if one of the jail systems either offers us more bed or requires us or wants us to do more, I don't know, I mean.
Yeah, there's no
all the
reason.
variables.
Yeah. There's no reason why it won't work. I'm very confident. We used to, before joining SCORE, we used to do contract services with other jails. I will say that having SCORE is great for us operationally. There's no doubt. For misdemeanor bookings or felony, we go to one location. They even do meets with us. Operationally, they're great. It just really comes down to cost. At what point does it outweigh having that exceptional service and a facility that's very close to us? But when you look at the numbers of, conservative savings of $2.1 million, I'm making the recommendation. I believe this is going to be the best for our city and for our citizens to leave SCORE.
I'm with you, Lydia. I was, probably about 10 times I came back to the chief and a day and the numbers people, and just because this is a big move. Councilmember Kopeng, and then Councilmember Duclos.
Chief, I appreciate your presentation, and I'm certainly understanding of the direction that you are recommending we go as a city, and I'm supportive of that. Getting back to the ADP though, I'm really puzzled by this, and I need your help. I'm looking at the numbers. CTAC, smaller incarceration rate, 100% increase. We had a 33% increase over the last 8 years or 10 years. Burien was flat. Then we've got Renton Tukwila is a 28% decrease. Renton's a 35% decrease. Auburn is a 49% decrease. Yeah. And Des Moines is a 52% decrease. I mean, those are major decreases. I mean, it's not just like a 5 or 10%. These are big numbers, and I'm just wondering, is there any collaboration going on with these jurisdictions to find out how they're figuring out how to lower their ADP so substantially that? I mean, I'm very curious. Are there new techniques that they're utilizing that we have not, that we don't have available to us, or that we haven't taken advantage of? What do you see as? I mean, there's a reason for these numbers, because I look at South King County really as a whole, and I don't see there being that dramatic of a difference between jurisdictions that would justify the substantial difference in incarceration rates?
Yeah, I think you're raising a good question. I think significant part of managing the ADP is budget-driven because there's such big dollars involved. I think each jurisdiction is being conscientious about their ADP. And one of the things, one of the reasons I'm making recommendation that we leave is that public safety is a factor. And by going to contract services, maybe we won't be so conscientious about ADP if we need to. You know, and Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Honda asked about crime rate. I think the economy is really well, doing really well at this time. And I think that's playing a big factor in reduction in crime. But bottom line is, I think there comes a point where there could be a public safety factor when people aren't being incarcerated when they need to be incarcerated because the business decision is overriding that decision. So I think by leaving SCORE at this point, it gives us more flexibility as to how we manage our ADP because now you're looking at $58 for a booking. And now some people say Yakima, you know, there's 15 agencies, I think, I didn't count, but there's a lot on this side of the mountain that's utilizing Yakima as their jail facility as part of the contract. So we would not be the only jurisdiction. There's quite a handful of jurisdictions sending people there at a much lower rate than what would cost us here.
I think public safety is such an important part of what we do, and I think it's really the most important job we have as a city is to make sure it maintain safety for our community. And I look at, you know, I understand there's a budgetary component that goes into every decision we make, but I can tell you as one council member, I want the budgetary concerns to be less significant in our decision-making process than it could become if things continue to escalate. I mean, if we're looking at $300, $350 a bed, I mean, this escalator is going up and there's no sign of it slowing down. At some point, I mean, we're going to have to make monetary decisions that could jeopardize our city, so the safety of our citizens. So I don't see that as a tenable position for us to be in as a council to recommend continuing down the path that we're on. The other side of this, though, that really is troubling to me, well, not trouble, it's concerning to me is the partnership that we have with the other cities. And I don't take lightly the fact that, you know, we're basically stepping away from, we're going to maintain, obviously, would be maintaining our position of responsibility as far as the bond is concerned. But as far as just being in partnership with these cities, I gotta think that there may be some stress there. I don't know to what level that would be, but I guess as a one council member, I don't take this lightly. I value the cities that we have partnered with, and certainly value the relationships that we continue to have. And this is a difficult decision. So thank you.
Councilor Duclos.
We're still going to be paying our share of the debt service.
Absolutely. Correct. Yes.
Well, I know that. I'm asking the mayor, if you don't mind.
Yes.
How long does that go for?
21 years.
21 years from now?
Correct.
So.
2039.
Yeah, so we'll be spending $1 million, basically, for the next 21 years. So we're not walking away from this, but I happen to be here when this was presented to us as a council member. It was supposed to reduce our costs, and it has never done that. We paid more and more for it all the time. And I think maybe part of it's because the operating costs of SCORE is more than the facility we used to use in Yakima. And I think that's one of the problems. The wages over there for people, and the different staffing throughout the whole day. I think there's something like 3 different staffings or something, as I recall. Yeah. So, I really think that we really need to. I'm in favor of changing what we're doing. I know we have to pay what we said we were going to pay as a member of the city, but Yakima's a nice drive.
Exactly.
We used to do it all the time. So.
Well, the nice thing is they're going to come get it.
They'll come and get them now?
They're going to come get them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's going to help us.
That's good. Well, I think we really need to look at getting out of there. It was sold as a good thing, and it never, ever was.
Right. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. If I was sitting at home listening to this, or I'm going to listen to it later, I don't want the public to think that over the last few years we've decreased our ADP because of costs. We have not,
No, we've not done that.
ever put the public at risk by not putting someone in jail if they belong in jail.
That's right.
As Judge Larson often says, it's an agreement to go to jail between all the attorneys and often the inmate. And those that are going to jail belong in jail, and they've pretty much agreed to go to jail. That's what he tells me often. But I think it's really important that if I'm sitting at home listening to this, we have never put our citizens at risk by being more concerned about paying jail costs. We just have not done that, and it almost sounds like we're going down that path, but that's not. That's
No,
not
I
what we've
disagree
done.
with you. I think what we're doing is looking at our costs, but we're going to use a different way of putting our people.
No, I agree. I just the conversation that we've had, we just have never put money over safety of our citizens.
Well, and actually, that's what we refuse to do. And that's why, you know, we've been penalized last year. This year we got hit with $670,000 increase, last year with $1 million, for the year before that. That's $1.7 million. And so as an individual who was a practicing, I got to throw it in since for 19 years I was a prosecutor, and I think it's wrong and immoral to make decisions based on community safety, based on money, which is what you're saying, which is the conversations countless conversations that I've had with the chief about our refusal to do that. I do think that it is important the elimination of Auburn's municipal court. They had a judge. Let's just pull the curtain back. I agree, it's very important. They had a judge who was very law and order. And if you're trying to dig in, you're trying to figure out what in the world happened. We're here in public. What happened was they had a judge that was very law and order and was putting people in jail. The city administration did not like that, and therefore, instead of, because it was an elected judicial position, they eliminated their entire municipal court and contracted out that service. That then resulted in ADP halving. That's what happened. I mean, so we're trying to be diplomatic. We don't, I think the elimination of what happened, how did the wheels come off? At least one of the pivotal partners made a major decision. And then you have this other, the phrase I used, and which has been used in this, is exactly what Susan was just talking about a second ago, which is a race to the bottom, which is literally how few people can we get away with having in jail. And that is a dangerous, dangerous way to do business. And that, because of that, and because of the unwillingness of the partners in SCORE to listen to us, we had to take the unprecedented step, I'd say 6 months ago now, of starting this process. We've been working on this for 6 months because we realized at that point that nothing was going to change, and that we needed to do something, and we need to make sure that we're never in that position of, we don't have an inexhaustible bank account.
As I recall, we ended up paying more than a lot of the other ones. And then that's why they wouldn't let us out of things.
That's right. So we've got great judges. We're very fortunate to have great judges. They have never made this. There has never been a directive or anything from my office to the prosecutors ever about ADP management, other than, if somebody deserves to be in jail because of a mandatory arrest or something where they have committed a law violation, that's what we do. So, Chief?
Okay, so one more slide. At this time, no feasible alternative option exists and has been presented for SCORE member cities to remedy the unsustainable financial obligation for the city of Federal Way. We do have some planned meetings coming up, so we're certainly open to listening and talking, but at this time, I just don't see a feasible option that's going to work for us. The police department recommendation is to discontinue utilizing SCORE for inmate housing and manage our own jail services, utilizing available regional jail services, bringing significant financial savings of almost $2.1 million annually. I believe this is the best course of action for our city and for our citizens at this time.
Okay. Lydia, and then Councilmember Asefa Dawson, then Councilmember Johnson, then Deputy Mayor Honda, and then Councilmember Martin Moore.
Okay, so one more question. Can you go to the jail cost scenario slide, please?
Which one was it?
The jail cost scenario. It's
10.
Okay.
It's page 5, but I don't know if that is. Okay, so the bullet underneath talks about the 135 and then booking fees, which is additional 125,000 annually.
Mhm.
Where does that show up in the projected 2020 annual jail services?
Okay, so down here,
Yeah.
King County Jail has a $135 booking fee,
Mhm.
and Kent Jail has $35 booking fee. So when we book people into these facilities, we're going to need to pay a booking fee. So we're budgeting $125,000 for a booking fee for the entire year. I think, was it the next slide you had a question?
So where does that show up in the, when you look
Total
at the
cost?
projected, yes?
It's right here in the
Okay.
2.395 million.
But the 2.395 million is already in the jail cost.
Right, it's
So
one
is-
of, it's one of the, so all the contract jails, fees, and booking fees, it encompasses, it's all included to be the $2.4 million here.
Okay, so the bullet is not in addition to?
No.
It's
No,
part of.
it's included, and then all the other costs are added in.
Thank you.
So the total savings is $2,085,000.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, that answers.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I do just kind of want to confirm we're not paying any additional penalties besides the debt service, first of all, the $935,000 a year. And then also, I agree, I think with the kind of arbitrary spike in cost, this makes sense for us as a city. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. But at the same time, for tonight's purposes, we're just voting on this agreement rather than like the projected expenditure considerations, such as the officers for transportation. We're not voting on that tonight. Just wanted to clarify that.
Sure. The decision tonight is whether to withdraw from the SCORE interlocal agreement.
Okay.
Obviously, more work needs to be done.
Okay.
And actually, to that point exactly, Councilmember Johnson, it's about giving me authorization to notify SCORE. Before I could send SCORE a letter giving them notice, I have to have your approval. That's really, Ryan, is that correct?
Yes, there's obviously significant financial implications with this decision, and then it's also withdrawing from an interlocal agreement, so council needs to approve it.
Well, that might wake them up a little bit, too. They might be more willing to work with us, but.
You know what? I really doubt it. I
Okay.
really.
I'm fine, I'm fine with
Yeah.
what we're doing.
I have been astonished when I've been talking, and all good people. I mean, all the mayors, city managers.
But won't that raise the cost for the other cities?
It will. It will.
Well, let's see what the other cities
Well, I
say
know. That's actually that's another great point, Councilmember, is included in the notice. And what I said at the last board meeting is a very important point, is that we will continue to listen to options up until we get to a point of, where both sides need to plan for a departure. I actually, this could actually let them know that we're very serious, but they'd have to hit the restart button in a fundamental way that I don't think they're prepared to do. But you're right, if this won't motivate them, nothing will. Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. What would happen if after the SCORE board gets this letter from the mayor, if the council agrees to do this tonight, if they change the way that they're charging and they reduce their costs, would we stay?
It would have to be, actually, Another really good, we get great questions. We've been working on
I've
what
been
the,
practicing.
we've been working on or what we refer to as the magic number. And there is a number out there that it would be significantly less than it is now. But that's I don't think they're going to, let's see. But I think they would really need to, we'd have to sit down and it'd be a negotiation.
Well, I was going to say, if they know we're serious,
Yeah.
negotiations might start, because if they lose us totally,
yeah,
they're losing a lot of money, and the other city's going to have to pick it up.
Yeah, I've got a range of numbers. I've been talking to a day, and actually, a day was in my office today, and we were talking about what that number would have to be, and there's a very small range of where it would be, and the chief and I have talked about it as well many times, but. We'll see.
Well, I still think, and I'm supporting this, I really am, because I've been, I was here when SCORE started.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to save us money and time, and it's not. It's cost us money and more time. And I think if they realize that we're serious about this, they may start to look at it, because now they're going to be missing that money.
Exactly. One of the things I told them is, at the board meeting, is they need to just, and frankly, I think they need to just completely start from like we did with our budget, which was turn everything upside down, zero-based, not give away beds at $80 a day to DOC, and really, but we'll see if their political will is there. I've talked to Dennis Law. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what they're charging everybody should be equal.
Right.
We shouldn't pay more.
Exactly.
Than DOJ.
Right. Now, here's the problem, and this is the real kicker, is that, and this is why it's a little bit intractable, is that we all came in at different, our investments and our bonds are different, and this is what makes it very complicated, is that Auburn and Renton pay about $1.8 million a year for their bond. We pay $935. So how does that, and here's the other thing too, that is just absolutely just completely inequitable. Every year we've been running the SCORE facility has been running efficiently, and we've had balances left over. So they've been paying our debt service every year. But we get our debt service paid a little over $900,000. Auburn and Renton have been paid $1.8 million a year. And that's the way the agreement works, that's the way the formula works. It's a mess. And so to get that recalculated is going to be almost near impossible. But we'll try.
I support pulling out of it if we need to, because it's costing too much money, and we have better things we can do with that money.
Right. Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Chief, you've been very patient, and thank you for your presentation. I've appreciated hearing and listening to all the questions. We've all heard the definition. We've all heard the saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I think, Mr. Mayor, as it's been stated very clearly throughout this earlier today, or during this meeting, we've been at this for a long time, and I think enough is enough. And if we as a community are talking about funding revenues, and if we're talking about funding youth programs and other potential programs, it's really important that we look at, turning a different page to this chapter. And so I do support this. I think it's really important. And I believe that this current system of the SCORE jail doesn't work. I know that several months ago, earlier in the year, to be specific, I've had these late night chats with our former deputy mayor, Hope Elder, and I was kind of talking to her about how the SCORE thing doesn't work. And we keep hearing that the costs are going to be cheaper, and yet in our monthly meetings in FEDRAC, that's not the case. And I think, like my colleague, Councilmember Copain said, we got to be really careful in that we don't compromise safety and business aspect, when we're looking at the budget. So I think that's really important as well. So, I do look forward to further conversations with this, but I think it's important that we support this. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'm actually going to make a motion to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to extend the meeting past 10 p.m. as per our council rules. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr.
All right,
Mayor.
matter passes. All right.
Councilor Duclos is not here.
What's that?
It's okay, six.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, one abstention.
Did you have another?
Nope, thank you.
All right, can I get Lydia, can we do this real quick? Okay, Councilmember Cepheus-Dawson?
Yeah, thank you. One more question, but this is a really simple one. So the ADP numbers each year have gone down. So is there beds available, or is it because DOJ is taking on those beds? Or what's the capacity, actually?
They budget for 600 beds. So there has never been a question of us being able to put people in SCORE. There's been capacity.
So there's other contracts that they have?
Yes,
then?
they contract with numerous jurisdictions as well. So DOJ, Department of Corrections, has about 250 to 300 inmates at any given time at SCORE. The rest are owner cities and contract jail services. And it ranges around 550 to 600 on any given day, total inmates.
So us pulling out, if we end up pulling out, may not be that significant then? Because we're talking, 78 or so ADPs a day? I'm just saying.
Right.
So maybe they can contract that out, or
maybe
whatever, to take the load.
There'll certainly be a financial impact, because we're one of two cities that has the highest ADP, has the highest contribution rate to operating the jail. The total jail budget is $35.8 million, and we're one of the major contributors for that budget. So it certainly will be felt, but we are only one of 7 jurisdictions, so.
Okay, thank you.
When we give notice, that may wake them up a little bit, too.
Exactly. All right. Thank you. All right, so I think we've, a great presentation, Chief. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Hunter, do you have a motion?
I move approval of the proposed resolution.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second, authorizing the mayor to give notice to SCORE interlocal member cities of the city's intent to withdraw from the interlocal agreement. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any further discussion?
Yes,
Deputy Mayor
I
Hunter?
just do have one thing more to say. Based on the information given tonight in the last several months, and I've asked a lot of questions over the last several months, I do think that this is a wise thing to do, but that's based on the information I have now, so hopefully, it works out.
Hear, hear. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. We're in brief recess for 5 minutes for matters of personal privilege. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and finish our business. Okay. Or what? Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, we are back on the record, and we're on to item C, multi-jurisdictional reimbursement agreement for air-packed import study. All right, and we've got Yard Weidenfeld, Senior Policy Advisor, to give the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Farrell, and thank you, members of City Council. This is the much talked about study of local impacts of the SeaTac International Airport that I believe commentator Dana Holloway spoke about before. First of all, I just learned last week, actually, that the City Council rules require every report to begin with a statement of financial impacts. So the financial impacts of this would be $70,795.27. It is included in Mayor Farrell's proposed 2019 to 20 biennium budget, with half to be paid in 2019 and the second half to be paid in 2020, and no future costs are expected. Going back to, what was it, 6 months ago, actually exactly 6 months ago, on March 6, 2018, the City Council, Federal Way City Council, unanimously approved a resolution 18-735, a full copy of which is attachment 1 in the council packet. That resolution supported state efforts to fund a Department of Commerce study to analyze the current and ongoing community impacts of the SeaTac International Airport aircraft operations. I had indicated at that time that was right before the state legislature voted on the budget proviso that would fund this, and I had indicated at that time that supporting that resolution did not in any way obligate the City of Federal Way to financially support, but that there would likely be a future request to do so, which has, of course, happened shortly after that passed. Well, a few days, actually, I think it was just a few days after the City Council voted that way, the state budget, supplemental budget for 2019 was passed with a proviso sponsored by our own Representative Mike Plicciotti, along with the 33rd District Representative Tina Orwell, that allocates $300,000 in state funding on the condition that an equal amount is raised in matching funds by local communities. Originally, the request from City of SeaTac was for $500,000, which is what I'd indicated in my presentation in March. It passed both houses and was signed by the governor at the level of $300,000. The proviso also requires feedback on project scoping and the consultant selection from the 6 cities of SeaTac, Burien, Des Moines, Tukwila, our city, Federal Way, and Normandy Park. And I will indicate for just full understanding, there's question in this, that it came up in one of the steering committee meetings when we were negotiating payments, that the full proviso language, a full copy of which is attachment 2 in the packet for your City Council packet, the language about the feedback is a separate clause from the language about funding. So there's certainly a good argument, I think, as a lawyer, I would say that they probably would have to consult us whether we funded it or not. Although there was a lot of discussion with other cities with respect to whether there was an element of pay to play, and I'm not sure how the Department of Commerce would deal with a city that did not fund it but still had that clause saying they're supposed to consult the cities. So I did want to indicate that as well. The full budget proviso is attachment 2. Starting in April of this year, I had a series of meetings that were called by the SeaTac City Manager starting April 24th, 2018. This is fully discussed in the full 6-page report, 6.5-page report that is in the packet that was put together. that wrote for this. Starting at that meeting and over the course of the next couple months, May and June and the first half of July, the city managers and of the 4 cities that have that sort of government, plus the economic development liaison of Tukwila and myself, delegated by Mayor Farrell, met to negotiate the issue of matching funds. And I kind of have a fuller discussion of those meetings in the full report, but ultimately, just to get to the bottom point, sort of summarized on this slide, that the city of SeaTac, which actually has had a separate fund set aside for this that was paid by the port to them in mitigation at the time of the 3rd runway, they agreed to serve as fiscal agent for the entire $300,000 local match, which is required, with other cities signing a reimbursement agreement to reimburse them a fair share of that. That way, they could fund the entire local match to the Department of Commerce as required immediately, and other cities who might have budget issues do not necessarily have to pay them right up front. They also did agree, however, to contribute half of the match themselves, which is $150,000. The other cities, after some negotiation, agreed to split the remaining $150,000 on a per capita basis, meaning proportional to each city's population. So the city of Federal Way share under that is $70,795.27, as I indicated earlier. The entire proposed agreement is in attachment 3, and if you look at the, I believe it's the last page of that agreement, attachment 3 does contain the respective shares for each of the cities. Like I said, $150,000 for SeaTac, and then the per capita shares for each of the other cities is in Exhibit A, actually, of attachment 3, which is the second to last page of attachment 3. Okay, so so that was basically agreed upon, at least in terms of, and again, I did very carefully indicate to the other cities that I was authorized by Mayor Farrell to agree to that as being the mayor's proposition, that I could not obviously guarantee that city council would pass it. That's the city council's prerogative. So I made that very clear with the other cities that what I was promising, and Mayor Farrell authorized me to promise, was that the mayor would agree to propose this amount, but ultimately I could not guarantee what city council vote, because that's your prerogative. So that agreement we reached on, I believe it was July 2nd. After that time, the mayor received another letter, a letter from the Department of Commerce that invited us to, with the other cities, to start participating in the scoping process and the selection of the consultant, as per the proviso language, which requires feedback from the 6 cities, again, independent of the funding clause from the 6 cities. One of the things that had become sort of a sticky point to some extent was that, and I'll go over to the next slide at this point, that there had actually been some last-minute changes to the proviso language that was negotiated at the last minute. My understanding was that the Port of Seattle, literally on the last day of the legislative session, was opposed to certain items that were in the original proviso. And they negotiated at that time only with the city of SeaTac and with Representative Orwell and Pliciotti to get some language change to it. Representative Orwell and Pliciotti, city of SeaTac, agreed to it. They had indicated to me they were afraid that if they didn't agree to it, that it was possible the governor would veto the whole thing. So they felt that they had to do that. However, largely due to an administrative error, because they were rushing to get the whole thing passed, the amended language did not get into the actual passed legislation. However, the Department of Commerce issued a letter, which is in the packet. It's attachment. I'll get that in a second. It's attachment 4, a letter that was sent by the committee chairs to the director of the Department of Commerce requesting that they actually follow the amended language, despite the fact that it didn't make it into the final actual passage. They indicated a intention to amend the proviso in January when they re-meet, and in order not to delay it, and actually I think it was part of the negotiations with the port, that they would send this letter asking Department of Commerce to follow the amended language, even though it technically didn't make it into the language. To go over the the change, the basic changes, there's a few other ones, but the main ones that were changed were, first of all, the phrase quality of life was deleted. The original proviso, as you'll see there in attachment 2, says that the study is to look at impacts of the airport operations on quality of life associated with various things, including airport noise and health and traffic and so on and so forth. So the phrase quality of life was agreed to be deleted. The City of SeaTac City Manager, Joe Scorcio, had mentioned to me that since they thought the phrase was vague to begin with, they didn't object to that. And in any case, the original proviso had defined quality of life as being associated with those things, and most of those elements, air traffic noise, public health, traffic, congestion, and so on, do remain even in the amended language. So that was why they agreed to that. However, as I'll talk about in a second, I know that for many members of the public, that phrase is nevertheless itself very important. They also had deleted pedestrian access to and around the airport, which is not too much of a concern for Federal Way. And they deleted the term public safety and crime within the cities. My understanding, again, from the SeaTac City Manager was that they agreed to delete that because they agreed that they could maybe show a correlation with crime, but not necessarily causation. Later, however, the Port of Seattle lobbyist indicated that they had actually reached a separate agreement on mitigation for increased crime with the City of SeaTac, and the Port lobbyist said they felt they therefore dealt with that issue. So that's another thing which I know some people are concerned about. Finally, they took out the term other impacted neighborhoods in addition to our 6 cities. And this is actually something that the City of SeaTac insisted upon. It was not a Port of Seattle thing, because the SeaTac City Manager said that he felt that if it kept in the phrase other impacted neighborhoods, the whole study would be diluted. So he actually said they would withdraw their support for the proviso if that remained in. So that was actually taken out, not at the Port's request, but at the request of City of SeaTac. Moreover, the amended language adds 2 other entities. The original language said that the Department of Commerce was supposed to consult with representatives of our 6 cities in scoping and consultant selection. The amended language adds that they consult with members of the legislature and critically with the Port of Seattle as being part of what they have to consult with. And also, very critically, it enlarges the scope to include not just the negative impacts of the airport, but also the benefits to the 6 cities derived to proximity to the airport. I mean, you can see there that that was obviously done at the insistence of the Port. When we started meeting in July, however, the representatives of the Department of Commerce actually told us at a later meeting in August that they were advised by their legal folk that they cannot just ignore the actual proviso language. They have to, at least that's the law right now, so they have to follow it. They also, but they've been trying to basically merge the two. They've been basically following both. So Port of Seattle lobbyist has been part of the scoping committees and has really objected to that and has wanted them only to follow the letter, which they said they legally could not do. This became well known to members of the public, and actually in a couple of meetings the members of the public wanted to be admitted to the meeting, and we've just in the last meeting, which was last week, the Department of Commerce said, and I should say that Representative Pelliciotti and Representative Orwell came to the last meeting because they had seen what, kind of the deletion of that language. The admission of the Port of Seattle lobbyist without the public present raised a lot of hackles from some activists. So Representative Orwell and Pelliciotti were there, along with a Department of Commerce manager. And the bottom line is that Department of Commerce is sort of rebooting the scoping process and will be including members of the public in the scoping committee and will open at least the main scoping committee meetings to the public. So, and we still have yet to hear exactly where that will be, because they're obviously, some of that language deletion hit a point with many members of the public, and at this point there may not even be the political will to amend it in January. So at this point, that it's on hold right now until we hear more from Department of Commerce. They will be alerting us to how that'll get restarted, but they're going to usually invite more people to join. So looking at the reasons to participate, I had several in there. I've summarized some of them here. This is, as I think Dana Holloway said, the first study since 1997, so 21 years, to look at the impacts of the airport on the local communities. And that 1997 study was discussed in the Federal Way Mayor's Quiet and Healthy Skies Task Force report. As was gone over at that time, at our last council meeting, and I think that the study recommended $148 million in mitigation, which would be $232 million in today's dollars to Federal Way. That study was basically ignored by the port. I had heard myself a port staff person saying basically they believe the methodology was faulty. They also, I think, believed that it was somewhat biased against the port, they believe at that time. The study was run by the cities. So it was funded by state grant, but was actually managed by the cities, particularly Burien. This study, however, would be harder for the port to ignore because that's one benefit, and as the CTAC city manager indicated to me, a benefit of the ports participating in the advisory process is it'd be harder for them to ignore it then. And secondly, it's being supervised by Commerce, which is a neutral state agency. So it would be harder to say that there's bias with that. Secondly, as has been indicated by some activists that I've been in communication with, well, actually, the first thing was indicated by the CTAC city manager. I mean, this study will provide a snapshot of what life is like with airplanes every day, and we hear about that from a lot of commenters, including Ms. Holloway, who's here, that it's bad enough right now. It's not just the changes that are the issue; it's where it is right now. And the environmental review for the SAMP is only looking at changes, not at the snapshot it is right now. And also, this was indicated to me by an activist type that city staff and community members are directly involved in the scoping process, which is really, there's no other procedure that the airport's dealing with that actually involves city staff and community members as closely in the crafting of at least the advising. Commerce has the final word, but in the advising of the scoping than this, because in the environmental review for the SAMP, they're taking comments and so on, but ultimately they will formulate the scope themselves. Here, we're like right in the middle of the process, as will soon be some community members as well. I put in the report, I neglected to put this in a slide, but I guess arguably, and this is actually a point made to me by David Berger, one of the mayor's task force members himself, was that another reason to support the study is that it was very much pushed and sponsored by our own Representative Mike Pliciotti. I know that he's very invested in it. He actually, like I said, showed up at the last meeting, and he actually called me right before this meeting asking me about potentially considering coming to the meeting now, but I told him that the mayor would be recommending that it be fully funded, so he was happy with that. So that is another point. And again, some fuller explanations of all these are in the report that's in your packet. So basically, two options: approve the agreement, which is fully there in attachment 3, or do not approve the agreement and provide direction to staff. Mayor Farrell recommends option 1. And the only other point, Mayor Farrell asked me just to go over a couple other kind of tangential airport-related issues, just to remind people. First of all, at the last meeting, the council voted unanimously for the mayor and the council to sign a letter to the airport staff requesting that the comment period for environmental review for the Sustainable Airport Master Plan be extended. That letter was signed by all council members, or authorized to be signed, and I emailed it to the port commissioners and staff members on August 22nd. I have not received a response yet. I was told last week by port staff that they're working on a response. So as of now, the deadline remains September 28th, 2018. Secondly, I want to remind everyone, it's on our website, as I think Ms. Holloway actually recommended last time, and Tyler, our communications manager, made sure it went up there, the scoping. So we are having a public scoping meeting at the Federal Way Community Center on the SAMP here, September 17th, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m., and that's open to the general public for comments, and they will be having a court reporter. Everything will be transcribed. Anything said, that's a really key and good way to get in comments on the scoping. So that concludes my presentation.
All right, council, any questions? Deputy Mayor Honda?
Why, thank you. I have one question first. Who oversees the Port of Seattle?
The port commissioners that are elected.
Who oversees the port commissioners?
The public, they're elected.
And that's it?
Correct, I believe so, yeah.
They do have an executive director, Steve Metrick.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So the actual staff is supervised by the executive director, who is hired by, like a city manager, is hired by and reports to the 5 commissioners.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank you for your work on this, and I would like to say that several months ago we had Sheila Brush and her group come to the FEDRAC committee meeting, And we did pledge at that time that we would be supporting this financially. So I'm glad that the mayor wants to support it. But the council voted the committee voted some time ago that it was very important that we support this. I think this is one of the single most important things right now going on in Federal Way for our residents. And I would say that when I was in Iowa for 15 days holding my new granddaughter, they don't live anywhere near an airport. In fact, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours from the nearest airport. And one day I was at the city pool laying in the sun, and an airplane flew over. And we all went, what? And I was actually reading emails from Quiet Skies Puget Sound at the time. And it's amazingly quiet when you don't have the constant noise from the airplanes. And you know, I guess I didn't realize how quiet it was until that one single airplane flew over. And in the times I visited my son and his family in this town that they live in Iowa, I've never seen an airplane. In fact, he's never seen an airplane fly over, so it was very unusual. But it is different when you don't have that constant noise, and who knows what they're doing to our health. We don't know that it's not healthy. So I certainly support this, and I hope that we get some good answers out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
All right, Councilmember Kopang.
Yarden, thank you for the presentation and for all your work on this. I know it's been a labor of extreme effort and a little bit of love too, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You get invested in what you do.
Yes, absolutely. I'm asking about the changes to the proviso language. I want to understand how the change in adding the members of the legislature and the Port of Seattle could impact the proviso either positively or negatively. I think of the Port of Seattle being an interested party and I'm just concerned that they could shape or help to manipulate the information in a way that benefits them and is detrimental to the citizens.
Oh yeah, the fox is in the hen house.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this something that, the legislature obviously bought into this, and again, the legislature is looking out for the state as a whole and not necessarily always the best interests of individual cities. So I'm just wondering how negatively impactful this provision could be to the outcome of the proviso.
Well, I think what you've stated, Councilmember Kopang, is definitely a fear that people have, and certainly, I was told by the City of SeaTac staff, and the proviso was essentially negotiated between the Port, City of SeaTac, and the representatives, on this one, Orwell and Pliciotti. And I think my understanding was they feared even a governor's veto if they didn't accede to some of the Port's requests. But it certainly is an issue. I will state that what's been discussed and what everyone understands on the sort of advisory committee that has been put together so far, just made up of the city managers of the four cities, myself representing Mayor Farrell, and then the economic development liaison of Tukwila, and then also the Port of Seattle lobbyist, is that the final decision rests with Commerce. They have the final say, that we are only advisory, and that we provide that advice. I will also say that Mayor Farrell has encouraged me to be very vigilant in sticking up for the interests of his and your constituents, and I have done so. I think I've actually made a little bit of an enemy with the Port of Seattle lobbyist to some extent. A little bit, even Representative Pliciotti said maybe I was a little bit too forceful, but well, he didn't say that, but I don't want to misquote him. But I think he didn't think I should be pointing at him so much when I was making my points. But in any case, I've been very vocal about making sure that we stick up for that, and that the language, for instance, I know the public's been very concerned about the quality of life language, and I've been very adamant that we want that to stay in there. And the Commerce people say their legal advisors tell them, for now at least, it does have to stay in there. If it would have to be legally amended in January for that to come out, and that's something we can have. And I've been actually already alerted our lobbyist about that as well as the other changes. I would also indicate that one of the things, members of the public showed up at SeaTac City Hall for our last two meetings. They found out about them and wanted to be let in. Ultimately, there was so much pressure that way that both Representative Pelliciotti and Orwell showed up last week to SeaTac City Hall, even though they're very busy and had their own schedules. They met with members of the public and the Commerce, a manager was there, an assistant director, and they basically promised that future scoping meetings, there would be a small administrative subcommittee that would be staffed, but the larger scoping committee meetings will include members of the public from each jurisdiction and will also be open to the public. And I know one of the things that some of the activists said is that if the port lobbyist is there, the public should be there. And I know that's something that Commerce is seriously taking under consideration as that being a rule as well.
Well, I want to let everyone know, first of all, Yarden, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mark, were you done?
No, I got one more thing, but
yeah,
go ahead. I was going to say, the other issue is, talk about the fox and the hen house. When the third runway was proposed, it was only supposed to be used in isolated instances. It's supposed to be in regular use. Obviously, the second runway needed to be rebuilt, and so traffic was moved over to the third runway. I don't know that's ever come back to the second runway. And I think when you talk about credibility in the community, Port of Seattle has lost a lot of credibility, I think, with the community as a whole, because they basically are not doing what they said they were going to do. And I think all the impacts that were assigned to the third runway were based on temporary or limited use. And with regular use, it's completely different. So I think that, the community definitely is owed a substantive response to this credibility gap that exists between the Port of Seattle and Federal Way as one of the 6 cities or 5 cities that are part of this proviso. So anyway, thank you.
And I want to say that actually the first meeting in mid-August when the public was there and we went in and someone had said something, I forget who it was, someone said, well, one of the other managers I think said, well, you have to understand the port doesn't have, is not really very credible with the public right now, or they have a lot of distrust or something. And I sort of chimed in for good reason. And the port lobbyist, that was what started a little bit of a bad relation with the port lobbyist. But, I've been very forceful about that. And I think that's been said at the start meetings as well. And frankly, I've never heard the port even try to argue against that point. And I think the mayor met with Symmetric, the executive director, and he also stipulated that they have a lot of work to do in regaining community trust.
Yeah, in fact, actually, talking about the third runway, that's one thing that when I really went through and when Yarden and the committee, the working group, the task force came out with their report, which just did a phenomenal job. Really, what leapt out at me was the finding that the third runway had a 6-fold increase in air traffic in 6 years. And that is an astonishing, it's at 600% increase in regard to third runway. So I'm somewhat I told Yarden to go be the rock in the river and to be a little unreasonable, which we need to be. And we need to put our foot down. We need to be the rock in the river, like we promised, and be a little unreasonable. And that's what we need to be. So thank you, Yarden. Councilmember Duclos?
Well, I'd invite them to my house at 2 o'clock in the morning when the planes are going over.
Right.
And waking everybody up and shaking your house sometimes.
Well, I want to do exactly. And I do want to say we received an email just this week about somebody who got, it was Susan Teglin Peterson.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she got, it was almost exactly that time. I want to tell everybody that I was having a conversation with Yarden last week, and we were getting, I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of this proviso language, and it's a little into the weeds, but that's where the big decisions are made, and you've just got to be really careful with this stuff. And so I want to tell you that when I heard that they were going to take quality of life out of the study, my first reaction is, well, let me make this simple. That's in the legislation. If you don't make the study to include quality of life, you're not going to get our money. And that was really where I was kind of coming from. When I heard that the Department of Commerce was going to mandate quality of life stayed in, that's really why I still maintain my recommendation for this funding. And we also consulted the task force members, Dave Berger and Chris Hall and Yarden and some of the others. felt very passionate and very strongly that we need to be engaged, and we don't want to necessarily be disengaged. I am concerned about the role of the airport and that lobby essentially co-opting this process. And so much, I'm going to just say this right now, and I'll say it on the record, I'll say it in public view, so much of what happens in this issue is a patronizing approach by the airport, by this entire complex, of just sort of patting us on our head and telling us, thank you very much for your input. Now we're going to do what we want to do. And that's really what has been very concerning for me about how we approach this in a methodical, thoughtful, forceful way. And so when I hear that there is a port lobbyist in here trying to take the edges off things, that concerns me a great deal. But I still think we should do this. Councilor Duclos?
You just brought a thought to my mind. Do we have a legal recourse?
Well, I think actually here's the situation. If they had stuck with it and said that they were not going to include quality of life when the law said so, we were going to contact the state auditor's office. That's how I felt. But they left it in, and they were for good reason, because it's part of the law. So we need to keep our eye on this. We need to be vigilant.
Well, I don't trust them.
Exactly, and this doesn't help. So I promised a room full of people. I promised this community, and Yarden is there in that room with me. We're going to be the rock in the river, and we're going to fight for our citizens, because this is what they've got planned is really going to really affect this community. So thank you for letting me kind of explain that process. But I wanted to let you know about where this proviso language, why it matters. So anyway, because if quality of life isn't in there, then what are we measuring? You're right. What's the whole study is useless at that
Well,
point.
the proviso defines quality of life by specific terms, which remained in. So, I mean, there was the argument with that. But, I mean, again, I will say the Department of Commerce rep said that, and I think our city attorney told me that he would certainly give the same sort of advice, that the Attorney General, which advises all state departments, advised them that they cannot just ignore the proviso. They have to go by that language, too.
Good to know. They need to follow the law, just like everybody else. I'm sorry, this does kind of fire me up a little bit. Thank you very much for your work on this. Council, any other questions?
Yeah.
Councilmember Cephedos.
Thank you. Interestingly, I've been traveling a lot in the past 2 months and seeing the big airports that are away from city, like you were saying, Deputy Mayor, like Denver and Dallas, and then I just saw Austin. It's just incredible. And you do start paying attention because of what's going on here. And so that's been really an eye-opener. So I'm glad we are involved in this process. And, unfortunately, this CTAC is, the proximity is here, and we have to live with it. And hopefully we will have some kind of a semblance and make this work for us and them as well. But my question is, the members of the legislature, how are they selected? Are they the ones who are sponsoring this, or
I'm sorry. Oh,
the legislators, are they?
I don't think. I think again, the Department of Commerce is supposed to get back to us with sort of a formal kind of reboot of the process. But I don't think. My impression is that the members of the legislature are not going to be a regular part of the process. They're just entitled to be there, particularly Orwell and Pliciotti, who are the sponsors of this. If like they came in last time. But I don't think. My impression is that there's not going to be legislators regularly participating. Is my impression.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. How long are we going to wait to reboot the process?
I think that it's the Commerce, the last meeting was just last week, and we should hear from Commerce, I hope shortly, within the next couple of weeks, I would hope.
I hope that, that we do push to start this process again. I mean, we can't let it just stop.
Right.
It needs to keep moving forward.
That's why we move forward with this language. It's not perfect. We're not but that's one of the reasons why I'm recommending this, just because some movement and partnership with these groups is important.
Ideally, I was going to say that the legislation contains the mandatory scope, but ultimately it says it doesn't need to be limited to that. So the final scope will be determined by Commerce in consultation with the advisory committee. So my hope, and I was talking with some activists about this, is that the final scope can be determined before the end of the year, before there's any chance to change the legislation in January. So that's one of the reasons why we do want to get this going ASAP, basically.
Well, if they try that, we need to, many of us need to go down there. We need to mobilize Sheila Brush's group and those other groups. And,
oh, they will be mobilized, believe me.
And that we just need to get down there and have our voices heard. Okay, Councilmember Duclos, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move approval of the agreement between the cities of Burien, Des Moines, Normandy Park, Federal Way, Tukwila, and SeaTac to provide local matching funds for the SeaTac Airport Impact Study in amount not to exceed $70,795.27.
Second.
I haven't finished.
No.
And authorize the mayor to execute the agreement and all the other necessary documents.
Second.
Twice. All right.
Very
Second
important.
squared.
Very important.
All right, exactly. Okay. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passed unanimously. Great job, Yarden.
Thank you,
keep it
Mayor.
up. Thank you very
Council.
much.
Thank you.
Arts Commission, sorry, I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking about when Yarden called me and told me about that exchange, and it was comical. All right, item D, Arts Commission agreement, appointments, excuse me. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to appoint the following people to the Arts Commission: Melissa Pricer, Dallas Frakes, and Jocelyn Pocock. And so Melissa will be to fill a voting position expiring December 31st, 2019, and Dallas and Jocelyn, to fill an alternate position expiring December 31st, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to nominate the individuals stated by Councilmember Johnson. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the appointment's passed. Congratulations, people. Item E, Youth Commission appointments. Councilmember Johnson.
I move to appoint the following people to the Youth Commission: Amy Ojiburo to fill a voting position expiring August 31st, 2020; Nick Pagliocco, Emily Odom, and Nettie Ovbiebo, hopefully I got those names right, to fill voting positions expiring August 31st, 2020.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of those identified and nominated for the positions?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations, that passed unanimously. Item F, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointments. Councilmember Moore.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to appoint the following people to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee: Mr. T.J. Bell to fill a voting member collect lodging tax position expiring October 31st, 2019, and Madalena Miller to fill a voting member collect lodging tax position expiring October 31st, 2019.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the nominations are confirmed. Thank you. All right, item G, Ethics Board appointment, Deputy Mayor Honda.
I move to appoint Karen Kirkpatrick as an alternate member of the Ethics Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2021.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and multiple seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes. Congratulations, Ms. Kirkpatrick. Item H, Diversity Commission appointments. Councilmember Johnson.
I move to appoint Julian Franco as a voting member to the Diversity Commission for a term to expire May 31st, 2021.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passed unanimously. Congratulations. Council reports. We'll start with Councilmember Asefa Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to start by congratulating Lynn on her Tristan's birth. And I also want to thank you for sitting here through this meeting with the baby at home. Thank you for your commitment to what you do, and we really appreciate your work, so I don't want it to go unnoticed. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Somali community who did come and speak today. And it also follows an email we received about 3 weeks ago or some, where someone was really upset about Safeway and how it's full of these people. And I was really bothered by it because that language is just hurtful. And to make that assumption that anybody, people who live, again, it's the how people perceive affordable housing, low-income housing, all these housings, that people think everybody who lives there, number one, is bad people. And so mostly you're seeing immigrants. And so, and that particularly, the person said the only people who were professional were the cashiers. And
which Safeway are you talking about?
320th,
Oh,
across
320th.
from Uptown.
Okay.
And so this individual made this generalized statement. And so seeing them today and hearing firsthand experience that there's a problem is even brings it more to home. So I know our city is a welcoming city, and I think you mentioned it earlier, but I believe we need to go further now and talk about our city being a safe city and not just a welcoming city. And for whatever it's worth, because I think if I feel like it's going to be a safe city rather than welcoming, I'd feel more likely to feel safer in this city rather than just welcomed. So I would like to encourage that. And what we're noticing also is, as they mentioned, Tukwila and SeaTac now, because of development and stuff, businesses are being uprooted. And it's not just about the businesses, it's also the community that is losing that safety net and that community place because of all these developments that are coming. So I'm just hoping that as people migrate here, people who've already settled here, immigrants especially like myself, I want to make sure that that does not happen to our community. We are a community now. This is home. And so I don't know how else to say it, but to say that it's very important that we do listen to what's going on around us so it doesn't happen to Federal Way, residents in Federal Way. And MSC Luncheon is October 18th. I'm hosting a table, so if anybody wants to sit at my table, please let me know. And then finally, my son left on Saturday to move to DC, and it was very hard. I'm kind of over it now, but I didn't realize if he hears me say that, he may not appreciate it. But only 2 days, right? But it was hard, and I don't know why it was so hard, because I've been through this over and over and over. But I'm proud of him, happy for him. It's an empty house now, but yeah, life happens, and I'm proud of him. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. And now for the newlywed, our Councilmember Johnson, who got married on September 1st to his bride Epiphany, and on behalf of everybody in this community, the council, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my colleagues for the gift that I haven't opened yet, but I'm looking forward to opening it. And as the mayor mentioned, I was married, and I really appreciate the community. I posted some pictures on Facebook if you want to see. They're pretty cool, but a lot of community members already liked it, and I was like, wow, people really are paying attention. So that's pretty cool. It was a joyous occasion. Leading up to the weekend, it was a little bit sad with the passing, as I mentioned earlier, of Senator John McCain, and I know that he represented unity, equality, and respect, and I think it's something that from hearing our community members tonight we can learn from and really embody. It also kind of made me reflect on, the fact that we really have a finite amount of time on this planet, and we have an opportunity as council members to have infinite impact with that time that we do have, and so it was really cool to watch his memorial services and hear all the good things that people had to say. I did want to also mention that I did get an opportunity to take about 20 young folks to the federal courthouse in downtown Seattle a couple weeks back, and it was really cool to see them interact with law enforcement in a different way and learn about different careers. And so I'm hoping that we could really embody that here, and they mentioned that they would like to do a coffee with the cop between the U.S. Marshal's Office and our police department. So I'm hoping we can set that up, but I think it's really cool for them to see all the different aspects of law enforcement. So with that, I'll conclude my report.
Great, thank you. Councilor Trent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate Councilmember Johnson and his beautiful wife, and I wish you both 100 years of happiness.
100 years? What more?
Very good. Thank you.
I too echo Councilmember Tran's sentiments, Councilmember Johnson. Also wanted to talk about some of the great things that are happening in Federal Way. I think one of the encouraging things about our interviews today was hearing, especially, I mean, it was consistent throughout, but talking about the great things that are happening in Federal Way and how the news isn't getting out necessarily. There really are some really neat things happening. We've talked about the Flavor of Federal Way, a first annual cultural event at Town Square Park. One of the many reasons the Town Square Park was built, to bring the community together. We've had multiple movies there. We had Wonder, and we had, what was that other one we did? Anyways, the one about
the little boy.
The little boy that, yeah. Well, Wonder and then the other one. But anyway, great movies, great events, communities coming together. But anyway,
Parks director should know.
we're going to find out.
The movie was Coco.
Coco, that's right.
That's
Thank
it.
you. God, it's like the bug in the brain here. We're like, we needed that, John. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Anyway, but another great event that I want to talk about was the Desna Cup at Sahali. It happened on the same day due to quirk and scheduling with the Flavor of Federal Way. But Desna Cup, another cultural event in our city that was well attended by local residents, but also they do a great job of bringing people in from all over the region. So really, but a wonderfully run event, and one that if you've seen the signs out there this year for the first time, they did a really good job, I think, advertising locally this year for the first time. It's been more, they really want to grow the event, and they're going to continue to reach out to outside of the community, but they also want to draw the community in as well. Great food, great entertainment. It's really a neat event, so definitely looking forward to that continuing on. It was in its 11th year this year. Also had the opportunity to go to the new to Federal Way Public Schools Teachers Breakfast at the PAC, and want to first of all thank the school district for supporting the PAC by having an event there. I think it's very important from a partnership standpoint, but it's a well-run. It's a facility that was obviously a beautiful facility. If you haven't been there yet, you need to stop by. We've got some great shows. Get on the schedule. Just Google PAC, P-A-E-C. You'll get there. But well-run event, and really was very encouraging hearing the speakers from students to fellow teachers to principals talking about really the encouraging things happening in the school district, and really kind of setting the tone, I think, for the new teachers coming in, that they can be a part of something special. And I certainly hope that's the case. The last thing I want to comment on, and again, it's been commented on in various forums, but Marwan Saloom did retire, and certainly are going to miss his presence in City Hall, but definitely wish him the best of success in retirement. I'm hoping that he gets to spend lots of time enjoying his children and his grandchildren, and spending time with his wife as well. So with that, I conclude my report.
Okay, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, Mr. Johnson, congratulations on getting married. I just completed my second year of marriage, and I can tell you it's rough. No, it's great. It is great. I know she's not listening to this, but it's really, she won't. Her mom maybe. Yeah, that's right. But Jesse, it's really it's a blessing to find that special person to share your life with, and you know, I know people all around you will give you a lot of advice, and you know, my 2 cents for you is take it and you know, make your marriage special, and listen, laugh, and love. Those are my own words. You've never seen those anywhere else. So there's more to be said, but you know, good luck. I hope you have a safe flight tomorrow at 5 a.m. And a little word of advice: if your wife wears a bride shirt, she'll get a lot of, well, when my wife wore that shirt, she got a lot of little free drinks and free meals, and it's like really special. Like in the airplane, they treat you really, really special because it's a brand new marriage. It didn't work for me, but no, I had my groom socks on, but no one was looking anyway. So seriously, Jesse, congratulations. Along with my colleagues, I really am happy, and I know that she's an amazing person. So congratulations. Also, 9/11 is next Tuesday, and so thanks to the work of the LTAC, we have now signage to your 9/11 memorial. And so if you follow those signs, that's where the 9/11 ceremony will be next week, so be on the lookout for that. This past couple weeks have been really interesting, and actually we've been kind of in somewhat of a recess, so to speak, and it's given me a lot of time to think and contemplate a lot of things. And so with the passing of John McCain, it was also quite interesting to hear Democrats and Republicans speaking about him, and it was really powerful. It was really powerful to hear that and to see that and to literally see many faces of the Democrats and Republicans in one room celebrating the life of Senator John McCain. And so I have to say, for me, that was really inspirational, because I think we live in a world that's very divisive, and we like to draw the line in the sandbox. And so the older I become, the more it becomes important to advocate for people and to really help people. Forget about the political parties. What are we here to do? And it was just, and I think that's what Senator John McCain did. He did what was right for the people of Arizona, and that meant bucking his own party, as we've all heard. But it was just, he's an inspirational man, and so I wanted to kind of comment on that. Also, I wanted to say thank you to my colleagues. Mr. Mayor, I appreciated your budget proposal, and I'm really excited about it this round, just because I have a little bit more experience in the council, and I know what I'm looking for, and so I'm really looking forward to looking at this in detail and really having meaningful conversations with my colleagues, but more importantly with the citizens of Federal Way. And so that's one thing I'll be asking people is, what do you think of our budget? And do you understand our budget? Do you even know what our budget is? And that's how I'm going to kind of measure if we're getting out to the public or not. And so I'm pleased with the score proposal. I think it's good. I think in the current as I quickly reviewed the budget, I believe it did not see any additional staff for the Economic Development Office, so that's something that really has to be reviewed by the council. I think, having worked with Tim Johnson closely, we all have, he needs
help.
He needs additional resources. That could mean a lot, Mr. Mayor, but he needs additional resources. And if we're going to be serious about economic growth, we also have to look at our community development department as well, because those two work very differently. And I know that for me, one of the things I would like to work with is I want to look at our business permitting process, because I feel like for the last couple of weeks I've heard from two businesses that it has been incredibly difficult. And I understand that's because of our staffing levels, but the little kids gym that opened up right next to Seattle's Children's and others, I'm just concerned. I know that Brian Davis is working incredibly hard and with the resources that he has, but that is I'm very curious about that whole process and seeing what we can do to make it easier so that we can become a stronger business environment here. So with that, the other thing I wanted to say about the budget is, over the last several months, we've heard a lot about youth programming, and so I think that as a council we need to discuss that. Clearly there's a lot of interest in that, and so that's something I'll be looking at as well. I I think there's a few more things I want to say, but I'm going to withhold it. But for now, I'll end my report, and yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Duclos.
Yeah, I would like us, and, you know, with this, with the ad hoc committee we're doing, want to work, I think the city needs to work more closely with the chamber on revenue enhancement and stuff like that, because those are business people. And if we don't have a good, strong business in this community, we're not going to survive, we're not going to thrive. Businesses are the ones that make us thrive. So I'm looking forward to working with the chamber. I've invited them to the next meeting of the Enhancement Committee, and they've been talking it over with their board of directors, and I hope they're going to come in with some good ideas for us. The other thing I'd like to see us, you know, I have a place in Ocean Shores, and they have a lot of different things. They have a convention center, like we have, and it's always filled with different events. But 2 weekends ago, it was Seafair, Seahawks. And they had retired Seahawks. They had a major parade in town, and they had all kinds of booths, which we could have up on the hill up here, where people were selling goods and food and all sorts of stuff. And they had a picture in the paper of the crowd from an airplane or whatever, and it was just a mass of people there. I would love to see us have something like that, that is Federal Ways. And Federal Way gets known for it. And our hotels are full because people want to come to this. And what happened down there to that, the lodging tax had proposed to the council $10,000 so that they could get everything going and running, and the council voted it down. And I know some business people now. I've become friends with them. I told them, you need to go to the next council meeting, you business people, and you need to tell them how much money it brings into the city coffers. And they went, and the city reversed itself. And the place was beautiful. And I wish we could come up with something like that. And maybe some of our committees can look at something that, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, but if you start it and it becomes known, people come, big parade, the whole thing, and we have the beautiful park over there that it could be held in. So I'd like us to kind of mull on that suggestion. And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Moore?
I just wanted to add something. I apologize. And I forgot to mention this. I appreciate what Councilmember Safadowson said about diversity. I appreciate seeing the Somalian community here at our chambers. I think it's really important. I do think that Councilmember Safadowson is right. We do need to go one step further. And I think maybe we need to see if there's a partnership with Safeway and seeing if we can post up signs that says we're a welcoming city. And I just wonder if there's an option for that. But in addition to that, I would like to request that the council be informed with the police department's review of what was referred to earlier. I would like to understand that a little bit more, because that is really concerning to me, because I think we are a very diverse city, and I think we need to do everything we can to make sure that it's known in our community.
Yeah, we'll communicate the findings. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate the Desmond Cup on 11 years of a very successful event. It started out small, and within the first few years it had grown quite large. And I wasn't here for it this year because I was holding my little granddaughter. I'm so excited to say that. And I really did miss it, but it's been 11 years, and it's been an international event for the last at least 7 or 8 years. And they have brought hundreds of people here to the city of Federal Way, so they do a great job of bringing in visitors to the city. I'd like to announce we're still looking for youth commissioners. If you live in the city of Federal Way, we are interested in talking to you if you'd like to serve on our youth commission. And on Saturday in the Town Square Park is the Symphony's Brews and Blues event. You can still buy tickets for that. And Jesse, congratulations. On Saturday, September 8th, will be 40 years of marriage from me and Bruce.
Wow.
So if you want any advice, I might have some for you. Congratulations, and I hope you have an amazing honeymoon. One more thing. I'm turning into Councilmember Moore. On the city's webpage is the budget discussion schedule. And so I would encourage the public to look at that. All of the meetings are open to the public. We would encourage the public to look at the budget and to let us know what you're thinking. If you have any questions, let us know. And if we can't get you the answer, we'll get a day to get you the answer. So give us a call if you have any questions, and please attend our meetings because we do want to hear from you. Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, we are adjourned. Great meeting, everyone.